Welcome to episode 71 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and this week, what a round. Whilst for the most part it did seem like everything kind of went the way we all expected, a lot of the games that maybe shouldn't have been as close as they were as close as they were. Obviously, the big one being the one at the very end between the Eagles and the Crows. There were a couple of other very, very close matchups that we will touch on. There is a coach transition that we will have to talk about, a CEO transition we'll have to talk about, and a club great officially announcing his retirement. So we have a lot to cover, so we'll just jump straight into it. How are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Again, pretty quiet weekend for me. Still rainy and miserable down in Perth. So I didn't actually get up to all that much. I'm trying to think. There was something I was going to mention, but I've completely forgotten. But it's been a bit one of those days for me. So yeah. What about yourself?
I haven't been up to much. I went to the footy on Saturday, of course. I was boots on ground for Richmond St Kilda with my best friend. Sadly, we lost, and her team won, being St Kilda, of course. So it was very sad. The game we get a game we let slip out of our hands. We'll talk about that when we get up to it. Otherwise, very pretty fun weekend. Didn't really get up to all that much. So it was pretty chill, but good times. Good times were had all around.
Yeah.
Um,
Good news.
yeah, and we should jump. We should jump pretty much straight into our first bit of news because we've got quite a bit to get
Yeah.
through. Starting with Simon Goodwin being moved on as Demons coach.
That's right. We're going to start there. Obviously, sort of not so much a surprise sacking, but something that happened at a bit of weird timing. Obviously, Melbourne absolutely belted the Eagles on the weekend before this news happened. I think this was one of those situations where they're sort of, talking about it, trying to get their off-season lined up, and they were like, okay, we're not going to go with you, but we're going to offer you, do you want to coach out, or do you want to just leave? And Goodwin chose to just leave. Fair enough, I suppose. Always a bit harsh when you know that you're not going to have any immediate future.
Mm.
Sorry, opposite, no long-term future. But so Troy Chaplin takes over as coach, his first coaching gig at the AFL level. Been an
Yes.
assistant for, I think it's 2 or 3 years. I can't remember
I'm not too sure how
for
long he's been an
Melbourne.
assistant coach for because I don't know if he went straight into it when he retired. He might have.
Uh, For some reason, I remember him doing another role before going to Melbourne. Anyway, I thought he did a mini thing at Richmond and then went to the D's as a proper assistant.
Possibly.
Um, but anyway, that's vague memories. So, and yeah, as I said, I'm actually gonna look up the Goodwin coaching stats. Do you have them on hand?
I don't at the moment, unless they're at the bottom of this article, which I am slowly scrolling through. But it's basically the article is basically talking about the board's decision,
Hmm.
Goodwin's thoughts on the said board decision. It does
Yeah.
go into a little bit of his stats, like the fact that he coached them to the Premiership in
Hmm.
2021. They'd made numerous
Yeah.
final series prior to that as well, but just
That's okay. I got it
not
up now. So.
not super much in the way of like actual decent information in this article. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. So, like Troy Chaplin, Goodwin actually technically got his start in 2013 for Essendon. I didn't actually realise that, so I thought it started us off. Um, One loss. Um, but really, he started the Melbourne Demon job taking over from Paul Roos, if I remember correctly. That was
Potentially.
sort of a Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was sort of an assigned takeover. Paul Roos took over Melbourne when they were atrocious for a couple of years, get them on track, and then hand them over to the next best coach, which there's decided to be Simon Goodwin,
Mm-hmm.
and started off pretty well. First 2 years made finals, 12 and 10, 14 and 10. A couple of years on the back foot, which was the 2020 and 2019 season. But eventually, won the premiership in 2021. Bounced right back. Obviously, because of their couple of down years, I think they drafted. Oh, that's right. They drafted Luke Jackson.
Yes, they did. They originally
Very
had Luke
early.
Jackson.
Yeah, so that was sort of the player that really bolstered them. They picked up Ben Brown for a bit of depth, and it just ended up being really good for them. Unfortunately, 2022 and 2023 was back-to-back straight sets. Faltering year with 11 wins, and now he's on that seven. Currently on seven. Oh, sorry. Well, he would finish on 7 wins and 13 losses for this season.
Yes.
So that's 106 wins. 85 losses for the D's. We won't count that one. And 1 draw.
A single draw is actually kind of impressive.
Yeah. So that's in the regular season because I didn't realize they split the finals up. So that's a 5-5 record in final. Well,
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. You go straight through into a grand final and then straight sets after finishing top 4 in 22-23. That's like the mathematics adds up.
Yeah, exactly. So, so as I said, I'm fortunate for that. A perfect record in 2021, of course. And then that prelim loss in 2018. I think that was to the Giants or Adelaide. I can't remember. It would have been one of those two. Oh, sorry, no, can't be of the Giants. No, that would have been Collingwood beat Richmond, so therefore it would have been a loss to West Coast.
If it was in the 2018 prelim, yes, it would have been West Coast.
Yeah, we can do math.
There you go. We figured it out.
With teams. Yep. That's pretty much his final thing. Obviously, if still young, young for a coach, 48 years old, is probably mixed reputation for some of the off-field rumors. Obviously, we're not going to dive too much into them out of respect, but it was always the thing of like the premiership was really good, but did he sacrifice a bit of culture for it? And from here on in, if he takes another coaching gig, is that something that he needs to work on? But as I said, it's very rare to be a premiership coach. He masterminded one of the best defenses in the league for a good 3 seasons, which can't be understated. So, that's all I got to say about him. You got anything else to add?
Not really. I just think that for the moments where Melbourne had been able to, like, whilst looking in, even when in the years that they were good, like in the periods of games where things just didn't click for them, the way he was able to kind of flip the team on its head, restructure them, and actually like have decent fightbacks. And they even had a couple of those like during this year as well. Like it shows that he can coach. He has the talent, but it's just sometimes a club just wants to go in a different direction, and that's looking like what their plan is. And I assume it's going to come along with a full rebuild, especially when you look at their aging midfield, as we've talked about immensely already.
Yeah.
Max Gawn getting to be one of the oldest rucks in the league. You're gonna start having to go through that whole big rebuild soon anyway.
Yeah, as I said, once Goldstein goes, it's a pretty big gap to the next oldest ruckman currently playing, which I don't actually think it's Gawn.
Gawn's 32, 33.
I think I got a feeling Witz is older than Gawn.
Witz is older, but like it's like
Okay.
Goldstein, Witz, Gawn. I think is the top 3.
Yeah, but the gap's pretty big between Goldstein, obviously. But anyway, so and
obviously, there have been rumors as to who may take over the coaching role. Troy Chaplin's already said he's not interested. He's happy being an assistant coach for a while longer. We know that John Longmire was approached, and he's confirmed that he's not interested. Adam Simpson is not interested. I think he confirmed that in the media like last week. So at the moment, apparently the media is looking at Nathan Buckley as the potential candidate to take over the role, but I don't know if that's the right decision, considering he's been out of a coaching position for a long time now and it's been predominantly media.
Yeah, and I think this is actually one of those lists where you probably could roll the dice with a a fresher, newer face assistant, because obviously they've still got talent to inherit. Like I said, you've still got at least a couple of years of Lever and May. You've still got the midfield core, which will be 2 or 3 years, even though you would probably think about retooling it a bit. What you do with Viney, maybe what you do with Oliver, even as he grows a bit older. So yeah, as I said, and it's really just the forward line where you're starting from. I wouldn't say scratch. They obviously have scored a few big scores the end to the tail end of this season, but yeah, that's probably the biggest downside to inheriting that list. So yeah, as I said, I would actually consider just fresh pair of eyes, really. Mum's obviously theoretically fixed a lot of their off-field issues, so you would hope that maybe it's just about getting a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of tactics.
Yeah, and even then, it doesn't have to be a coach that's going to be the coach to take you to finals. It could just be a coach that can lay out a decent set path for the next 5-10 years, and how to restructure, how to rebuild, and how to, I guess, redefine the team that this once was.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, it's just one of those things where they'll have to work it out. But I don't think Melbourne's in particularly a bad place. They're just very transitive. So whoever takes it over, as I said, it might get the pressure because it's like, oh, you could say that they could make the 8 again, but just at the same time, they could need that extra couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's entirely possible.
It's not much else to say. Yeah, so yeah, it's not really a farewell, is it?
No, I think he'll be back.
In some capacity.
He might take like 12 months off, just reset, maybe catch up on some hobbies instead, that sort of thing. Before jumping back into whether being an assistant coach or throwing a hat into a ring of being a senior coach somewhere, who knows.
Yeah, but that's the problem. It's like, we say that he could be back, but he could get addicted to League of Legends in between taking a break. So
that's a bad idea. Words to the wise to anyone: do not play League.
I don't know. What's a more toxic position, being in a League clan or being an AFL coach?
League clan.
What gets more toxicity?
Definitely League.
Probably. They're pretty high, but you got to give it to League.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyway.
All right, let's jump over to our next bit of news. Going over to Port Adelaide, where club great Travis Boak has announced his retirement at season's end.
Yeah, absolutely. So not retired yet. So a lot of these game stats that we're going to say aren't officially complete, but it is confirmed unless the AFL adds another mini season at the end of the season out of nowhere. He will fall short at 400 games.
Yes.
Age 37, 385 games, picked at round 1, pick 5, which I'm 90% sure is actually equal Port's highest draft pick. I think they're one of those weird teams that haven't had too many top rounders, so could be wrong. But yeah, so as I said, absolute club servant. Picked up in the 2006 draft and was pretty impactful straight away. Was a regular feature in that 2007 premiership side. Not premiership side, grand final side. That obviously got blown out in the grand final. And from there on in, he was one of the most durable, accountable, and consistent players you could ever really hope for. In all of his seasons, there were only 3 where he averaged under 20 disposals. And that was 2 of those years when he was starting to get sub, and one of those seasons was his debut year. He wasn't the most skilled player, he wasn't the most fastest player, but he was one that always just made the most of his decision making. And I think it's also forgotten, he was a very good clearance player for a good chunk of his year. He obviously played second fiddle, but he was a very good stoppage clearance player and was very good at linking up as well in stoppages. So even if he didn't kick the goal himself, because he wasn't a noted goal kicker, I think he still kicked 214 goals though, which, shows that longevity. Not that many players kick 214 goals. So, but yeah, and it was averaging about 0.6 per year. Yeah, so as I said, very good distributor, very clean with his usage, and probably he didn't get that many accolades. Didn't win Rising Star. I couldn't tell you who won Rising Star in 2007. Maybe Daniel Rich? Feel like it was that trophy.
Possibly.
What was I going to say? A few All-Australians, I think a couple, and 3 best and fairest, if I remember correct. Blaze probably has the actual things.
Praying that they're at the end of this article. We will find out.
It's all good. And yeah, but as I said, the most important thing was obviously that captaincy period, and of course that transition between 2012 and 2013, where he chose to stay on with the Power after getting numerous calls from Victoria to go back to Geelong, where he was heavily rumoured to go. Stayed with the club, and unfortunately never rewarded. But no one in their right mind could not link the massive increase in culture from that time period to now and not link that directly to Travis Boak. There were others as well. Obviously, the famous coffee meeting was actually with, I think, Jackson Trengrove, Travis Boak, and Matthew Lobb, of all people. That's a bit of a fringier one for you, but yeah. So obviously decided that they were going to actually lift the culture, decide to raise the standards, and geez, they did. Travis Boak, by all means, is one of the most ultimate professionals, and there is a reason why his body has lasted so long.
Absolutely. Like
As I said,
the way the AFL has transitioned on a medical side of things has allowed a lot of these veteran players to continue continue playing the game and have this longevity. Boak, Pendles, Sidebottom. There's a ton of players like this now that are extending their career past 15 seasons, which used to be unheard of. And it's...
Yeah, and his body is a marvel, because it's not like Nathan Fyfe, for example, who's like been able to prolong his career, but he's sort of been having to be patched up. Like, he's never really had a major injury. His lowest games total is actually equal this year and his debut. So it's only been since he's been resting and obviously not played straight away in his debut year. Otherwise, there's one 17 season, 2 18s, and 1 19 in his, nearly 20-year career. If I can do the math, that's 18 years career.
Yes.
And only 5 years below 20 games played. One of them 2020, which I think was only 19 games anyway. So
yeah, that was a shortened season for a reason. I can't remember if it was 19 specifically, but it was shortened for the obvious reason.
Yeah, so as I said, yeah, absolute club legend.
Absolutely.
And he'll be sorely missed. It's weird because I was like, in terms of the grand scheme for Port, I was like, I think Boakey probably should retire for the club thing, and I think he would know that. But it is a real shame, because playing a whole career outside of Victoria to get to 400 games would have been special. And don't get me wrong, this is 100% an equivalent. Like, this is like a 430 game career in a Victorian side. I think did we do David Mundy's retirement? I think I said the same thing.
No, because he retired before we started the podcast. But
yeah.
We could do
in my mind, they're both the same thing.
We could do like an off-season flashback.
Oh, not so much that, but I'm saying it's like, to me, those two players are equivalent to 400.
Yes.
400 game players.
Agreed. I'm still surprised that they didn't try and push Mundy to try and hit 400, because he was very close.
Yeah, he was. I think his I think it's like 5 or 6 games under Travis Boak. He's 10th in the games record holder. Travis Boak is at 8th currently, and I don't think he can overtake anyone. So,
No, I don't think
um,
so.
yeah, disposals wise, he's in the top 10, obviously, with such a longevity career.
Mhm.
Funny fact is he has almost the same amount of disposals as Gary Ablett Jr. over his entire career.
Well, there you
So,
go.
um, yeah, as I said, it shows how much longevity can rack it up because Gaz was having a few more close to 30 disposal seasons, whereas Travis Boak only had the back
Yes.
in 2019.
Yeah, that's right. I do have all of his honors here in front of me, all of his achievements. So I'll start with the AFL honors, starting with the Jim Steins Community Leadership Award in 2021, All Australian in 2013, 2014, and 2020, runner-up Brownlow Medal in 2020, runner-up Players Association MVP in 2020, runner-up Coaches Association Champion Player of the Year in 2020, All Australian nominee in 2019, the Peter Badco Medal in 2014. Apparently twice in 2014. That's definitely a typo, but I'm assuming that maybe 2014, 2018, 2019, something like that. Showdown medalist in 2013, 2020, and 2021. He won the Shanghai medal for the two China games in 2018 and 2019.
I forgot they gave out a medal
Played
for
in the
that.
International Rules Series in 2014, 2017. Rising Star nominee in round 19, 2007. And then for club honours, all-time games record holder for obviously this year. We were at the game where he broke the Port Adelaide record back in round 2. Um,
Mm.
he has won the Foss Williams medal multiple times from 2013, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Runner-up Best and Fairest in 13, 14, 20, 21, and 22. John McCarthy Award in 2019, 2021. John Cahill Medal in 2011 and 2019. He was captain, obviously, from 2013 to 2018. He became a life member in 2016. He won the Gavin Wanganeen Medal in 2009 and the Coaches Award in 2008.
Yeah, so as I said, very illustrious career, and it's funny you mentioned the China game because technically we'll be undefeated there, and it's a record that will probably stay there for a long time. I think Port Adelaide's going to have that perfect China record. Yeah,
I don't see a
no
re-expansion
other
into China anytime
no
soon.
other team has won in China except for Port Adelaide.
This is true, and I think Port Adelaide will forever hold that record because if the game is going to expand anywhere, it'll be to two places. It'll be to New Zealand, and it'll be to the
Mm.
US, which
Yeah, most likely. I think the Giants want to push that game, but anyway, that's not what he would talk about. But yeah. So as I said, of all the accolades, I know I was joking about that being an important one. As I said, I don't even think that like covers how important he has been for Port Adelaide. He'll go down as a club legend. Should be in the Australian Hall of Fame. In due process, and as I said, he might for the amount of games he's played, he may not be held in such esteem as some of the more skilled midfielders of the time, but he's absolutely durable and his leadership was invaluable.
mhm.
Yeah, so again, I know we salute everyone with the same amount of salute, but my heart is also saluting you, Travis Boak. As I said, it is crazy that I sort of have watched all your career, watch all your different haircuts. I do think a mid hair Travis Boak is the best Travis Boak. Doesn't look bad with all of it cut off, but when it's like a little wavy, he's a fine looking specimen. When
Yeah,
he was doing the jersey swap with Nat Fyfe, I was just like, man, if my rig looked that good at 37, I'd be a very happy man.
he works hard, and a
He does.
longevity career
Hmm.
has definitely proved that point. All right, on to our last bit of news, and we're only going to touch on this quickly because it did kind of come out of nowhere. No one was really expecting it, apparently. But Matthew Pavlich has announced he will be taking over as Sydney Swans CEO.
Yeah, and like when we say no one is expecting it, I don't even think Pavlich was expecting himself to be in the running. He gets a phone call from Mr. Sydney.
Mr. Sydney.
I don't
Yep.
know who's running. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the CEO because there's
No,
no CEO.
it's the chairman. So there's
Yeah,
like two
chairman.
separate
That makes
roles.
sense.
But yes.
I know. Yeah, and it's like, hey, you wanna be CEO of Sydney? And he was like, replacing Tom Harley, of course. Very good CEO. For I think it was like 5 or 6 years. That he was. Went on to the bigger role I think he has now with the AFL. I've forgotten what it is.
COO
I
is moving into
COO.
operations.
That's right. Yeah. So, yeah. So took it. No one was expecting it. Obviously, Adelaide born boy. Well, man now. But yeah, and obviously does a lot of commentary for not only Seven, but also is heavily involved in the news broadcasts. I think still for Channel 7. So yeah, it's very surprising. Also has a family there, so they're fully relocating. So it's one of those things where it's like very surprising. But it's like, I mean, I don't know. It's just a wait and see thing because it's like there was no real signs that Tom Harley would like have a business mind. But obviously he did a fairly good job with it. So
Hmm.
who knows? It's a good person to take over from, but we'll wait and see. As I said, it's like unless you're really corrupt, it's very hard to tell like when CEOs are like crap or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like one of those things where it's like they're either decent and you don't notice them, or they're an absolute train wreck and they're pretty. Some of those you can tell beforehand. I don't think Pavlich, like he might be mediocre, but I doubt he'll be like a walking disaster.
no, I think this will probably be a good thing. Plus, there's a little whole. I know the media has kind of already touched on this, but he's being
Mm.
reunited with crosstown rival Dean Cox, which is
Yeah,
a
as I
little
said,
story.
it's yeah. I mean, I guess it's sort of weird because obviously Cox hasn't really been involved that much with the West for a little while, so it's I guess it's reuniting two players that would have shared a lot of time and a lot of history together. I don't really think that there would be any animosity between those two in the playing days. They just don't really seem the type. Dean Cox, I reckon, might have had a sledge or two. I don't think Pavlich would have. He just seems like a very taciturn, stare off into the distance sort of guy. Um, but yeah, so as I said, kind of cool, bit weird, but yeah.
And then just because they have some of his notable stats in this article that I have brought up, I'm going to mention have stats. 350 AFL games for Freo, captain from 2007 to 2015, 8-time leading Fremantle goal kicker, 6-time Boak medalist, 6-time All Australian 2002, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 2 times international rules representative in 2002 and 2003. He's also a co-founder and executive chair for a company called Launched. I assume he may have created. Yeah, I assume he created it from 2017 to present. Business and commercial manager for the PMY Group from 2017 to current as well. He was also part of the AFL Laws of the Game Committee as an advisor from 2008 to 2010, and was also the Players Association president from 2015 to 2018. So he has he has developed
Oh,
a bit of
okay.
a business background. So it makes
Hmm.
a bit more sense when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, PMY is actually Stadium Logistics, apparently.
That
I
makes
didn't catch
sense.
the other group you said. Um,
It's got
what's it called?
launched, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it because it's not specifically the word launched, but like
Oh,
it's uh actually it is the word it's word launch, but and then a D at the end without the E.
oh, like snacked.
Yeah, like that.
Okay, I see it. So apparently technology and leadership, again, it seems like another commercial middle person venture, whatever it is. Cat talks about brand philosophy. Technically they should be putting this stuff first. Like his
Yeah, you'd
career
think
was
so.
pretty irrelevant.
Yeah,
You
like
know what I mean? It's like,
his AFL days have nothing to do with being
yeah,
appointed a
he
CEO.
could have been like a 5 game player and be just as qualified. But as I said, the AFL, I didn't actually realize he was the AFL PA for a while.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, pretty interesting. So yeah, no, good on him.
Yeah, hopefully.
I miss him over the West though.
Yeah, I know. But hopefully, he'll do some good things for Sydney. But that's enough of our news catch up for the week. It's time to jump into the games, starting with a Thursday night clash at the MCG. Hawthorn and Collingwood with a 64-point margin. Hawthorn won out 17-8, 110 to 6-10, 46.
And we booked this as possibly one of the matches of the round. And boy, oh boy, no one would have predicted this being the biggest margin for the week's games, especially considering some of the matchups we have. That's what we were sort of talking about earlier. But the tone of the game was unfortunately very set early with the pretty tragic collision between Jai Newcomb and Jeremy Howe for a contest. Howe would be stretched off in his return game, and Newcomb would go on to be arguably best on ground. The bump was, I know we talk about tribunal stuff later, but the bump was fairly fair. It was just pretty much the worst possible outcome you could get from that, which is a bit tragic. Howe gets sent to hospital, doing okay, but definitely is concussed. But as for the game itself, the Pies held on for a tiny bit. Like, you could tell, it was more like feeling out. It's like, well, are they a bit shell-shocked? Obviously, Hawthorn got a bit of a jump, but you're like, oh, maybe it's just because Howe came off. They were a bit out of the quarter. Maybe they'll come back. But no, it was an extremely good second quarter by the Hawks. They absolutely tore the game apart with a 7-1 margin, separated the two teams for pretty much the whole night, as the Hawks were just able to play out to their already set advantages. They dominated the outside contest, and although Collingwood were trying, they were running with them on the outside okay. And despite the rare low tackle numbers for Collingwood, a lot of credit has to go for the Hawks for knowing that with the way they set up the game, all they needed were a few solid outside marking options to find the inside option with a handball, get that fast play going, and it's still a few turnovers, but it was a lot more in the forward half. And when you limit the amount that Collingwood get off turnovers, they're just stuck with their general play, which is a lot slower. We've talked about it all year. Collingwood are one of the two teams that like to really burst from turnover, the other being Adelaide. But unlike Adelaide, Collingwood tend to play a lot slower in general play, almost equivalent to Fremantle in that regard. So yeah, that said, prevent a lot of deep entries for the Pie, considering that they couldn't get any faster chains going. They only generated 1 goal 2 from inside 30 metres from goal, compared to 8 goals 3 for Hawthorn. So while Collingwood's defence was obviously pretty bad, on the flip side, Hawthorn's defence was locked in. Collingwood did actually move the ball between the arcs. It's not like their movement was failing, but because it was so slow and Hawthorn was set up for a lot of intercepts between 40 and 60 metres from goal, a lot of the movement from the Pies ended up being stolen for the Hawks to actually launch more counterattacks compared to Collingwood.
Yeah, it was it was touted to be, again, as we mentioned, like one of the best games of the round. Like a heavy top 8 matchup. Hawks vying to try and break into the top 4. Collingwood trying to keep top 4 and make a play back for first position. And in the end, it just became a complete shell shock. It's like when Howe was touted to be kind of, I'm not going to say like, the savior of the Pies, but the fact that they've lost 4 of their past 5, not including this one at the time, without him, shows how important he is with his intercepts. And
throw back to the All-Australian stream where I did say that Howe was worthy of being considered because he was very important to that side. It's weird, like, I don't think it's so much like defensive wise, it's more just like Collingwood like that intercept generation. Like I mentioned, and because Howe's the best at reading it, like it's a very different profile when it's just Darcy Moore and Billy Frampton, or obviously Charlie Dean when Frampton was out. So it's one of those things where it's not necessarily the matchups, and the matchups have been bad. Like, don't get me wrong, this is like a simultaneous events happening. But it's also that offense generated from intercept, because it's it's not just their defense failing; they're struggling to score.
Yeah, their forward line is letting them down. Their defense has got a bunch of holes in it right now. It feels like their midfield is kind of their only stable core, and even then, that's not entirely the be all and end all.
Yeah, and as I said, so 93 was their highest score in the last, or in this last period of like their four wins out. Sorry, 4 losses out of 5.
Mm.
But yeah, I wouldn't even say their midfield's been particularly that. I probably wouldn't blame the forward line that much. As I said, I personally think that it is just a lack of overall transition and that gelling from the back half, because as I said, it's sort of just fallen off a cliff lately. So, as I said, it's still not. I mean, look, it is dire. Like, there's no doubt. Just like Sydney were last year, this doesn't bode well for their premiership defense. I don't think it means that you would rule them out, particularly for grand final or even finals.
It's not their premiership defense. It's just another whack at another shot at the title.
Yeah. Sorry, 1 year ahead of myself.
Yes.
Obviously, we're going to talk about Brisbane trying to defend their premiership a bit later, but yeah, I think the surprising thing is just like how dominant Hawks were after it was a disappointing loss last week. I feel like they lost to someone they got smashed by Adelaide. So, yeah, as I said, so it was a pretty good turnaround, really. Got smashed by Adelaide. It was 101-87. But yeah, as I said, so you know what I mean? It's like they needed a big game to win. Obviously, they were the most likely team to drop out that 8. But now it throws a real big question marks in the work, because it's very hard to pin who will miss. GWS becomes a lot more likely now. Fremantle still could lose, miss out on 15 wins, and obviously the Bulldogs, if they don't win out, will just be the ones to miss.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna look at the ladder at the end of all of this, because it's gonna be an insane run home. We've got 2 games left, and none of the top 8 is settled at all. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So the final thing that I will say about Hawthorn is I think the biggest thing that was the difference between this game and some of the other games I've seen was the much better play from stoppage. We've said stoppage isn't really their forte this year, but in this game they scored 7-3, including 2 centre bounce goals. And they also won a lot more of the ground ball through players like Meek. He had a pretty impressive contest against Canyon. Also got on the goal scoring sheets. I think you talk about him a bit later. Whilst Newcomb, Nash, and Ward were probably the most synergized we've seen from them in a while. And they sort of just helped their outside game as well. So, you know what I mean? As I said, with great outside marking targets, you're able to unleash a running game that's also fast but very safe, because that's the most important thing when you try and play aggressively against the Pies, because the Pies, they love you playing fast against them. They want you to take the risky kicks because they set up for it. But this is one where it was just like, well, they're smart options. You know what I mean? They're little matchups on the outside, that little bit of space. That turned into a lot bigger space down the ground. So wasn't a bad effort game from Magpie. I know their tackling numbers were down, but I think Hawks just countered them beautifully. And as I said, their defense, obviously a bit in shambles. And they will need to regroup very quickly because they have the ladder leaders next week.
That's right. They're going to be facing up against the Crows, and it's going to be a tough ask for the Hawks. We've already seen that they definitely have holes, and that's why they were touted to potentially miss the 8. I think with this dominant win against the Pies, it solidifies that they might have a better shot at staying in than people might have initially thought. But the Crows are going to be the hardest test they have to face before finals. And
No, Collingwood have the Crows next week.
Oh, Collingwood have the Crows? Okay. Oh, yeah. In that case, then Collingwood would probably lose this one. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're going to have to regroup. Whereas Hawthorn, they're, as I said, this was just one of the trickier ones. But they should manage all right. So, yeah, as I said, it's just like, because you keep on forgetting, like, we're talking about a 14 win, maybe 15 win missing out on finals. So,
Yeah, true.
as I said, it's not like it's going to take much to miss, considering how this year's going.
Well, at the moment, it's mostly tracking on. Well, the only team Adelaide via a game is the Dogs, still, and then the rest of it's all based on percentage. Because I think we're still sitting at like 3 teams that are drawn on points, so it's gonna be a tough ask.
The top 4 stands Adelaide, and as I said, and then you've got the 3 on the bottom, 6, 7, and 8, all on 56.
Yeah, there you go. So it's gonna be a really tough ask to just try and stay in the 8 at all right now.
Yeah, Gold Coast obviously having a game in hand, so
yes, of course. God damn you, weather. All right,
Queensland, I tell you,
shouldn't
be a state.
Whoa. I won't get into that.
Joking.
I'm not going to get into that.
Victoria, however, easily denounced.
That's fighting words right there. All right, let's jump into our individuals for this game, starting with Lloyd Meek, as you had just mentioned, played a phenomenal game against Darcy Cameron. He finished with 32 hitouts, 10 of them to advantage, and 3 goals from 10 disposals, 5 contest possessions, 7 marks, with 3 of them inside 50, 3 clearances, 7 score involvements, 4 tackles, 15 pressure strikes, and 2 1%ers. Just want to briefly mention as well, whilst we're actually kind of on it, Scott Pendlebury has signed on for a 21st season. He's looking to break Boomer Harvey's games record, because I think at the moment he's only like 12 off or something like that. He's very close.
Yeah.
And also Darcy Cameron has signed on until 2029 with the Pies as well. So that is officially off the market.
Got big breaking news as well that we're going to talk about. Just mentioning it, you might want to check the AFL website.
All right.
You might improv it. We might do it next week.
I'll check that out once I finish this. So I'm going to start next with Blake Hardwick down in Hawthorn's defence. I thought he was very, very solid, finishing with 11 touches, 5 contest possessions, 6 intercepts, 3 scoring involvements, 5 1%ers, 4 spoils. And then John Newcomb was impressive in the midfield. Despite the bump he did on Jeremy Howe, he managed to completely star out of all of Hawthorn's lethalities in their midfield, kicking a goal from 28 disposals, 13 contest possessions, 5 marks, 4 inside 50, 7 clearances, 11 score involvements, 13 pressure strikes, and 2 1%ers. Over on Collingwood side of things, Tom Mitchell was efficient, collecting 18 touches, 17 effective, equating to 94.4% efficiency, 7 contest possessions, 5 marks, 3 inside 50s, 2 clearances, 4 score involvements, 4 tackles, and 22 pressure acts. And then Harry Perryman, I thought he did the best that he could with what he was, just able to do. He finished with 17 disposals, 14 of them effective, equating to 82.4% efficiency, 6 contest possessions, 8 intercepts, 5 marks, 4 score involvements, 2 tackles, 13 pressure acts, 5 ground ball gets, 3 1%ers, 3 spoils, and 338 meters gained. On the injury side of things, obviously Jeremy Howe out with concussion. Thankfully, no other injuries have confirmed by all of the scans that he did over the weekend. He's all good otherwise. And then on the MRO side of things, Mubby Ochol was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against Dan McStay, and then Dan McStay was fined $2,000 for tripping Nick Watson.
Yeah, honestly, gotta say it's a bit of an effort to trip Nick Watson from Dan McStay. It's a bit of height to go down to that level. Let's try and I guess he got long limbs. It's easy for the reach, but
all right,
it's a long way from the ground for Dan McStay.
I've just seen the breaking news. We can touch that. We can touch on that when we get to the game that he was involved in.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So, shall we make our way down the list?
Yes, we shall. Heading down now, down the highway, down into Geelong once again, where the Cats hosted the Bombers, and with a 44-point margin, the Cats won out 15-19, 109 to 10-5, 65.
Yeah, and honestly, it was a surprise. Most people that this game was even a mediocre of competitiveness, as the Dons really did try their best after struggling in the first half. to a moderately wasteful Cats outfit. Despite being good around the contest and okay in transition, that's the Bombers. It was mainly consistent scoring that was the Dons' problem. Not bad at getting it up the field, but not as much cohesion and relying on some great individual efforts when they did get it into their forward line. But for such a battered team, that's really all you could ask. Their back line obviously being a point of issue for this game. 21-11 marks inside 50 in favour of Geelong. And it just felt like Geelong were going to score whenever they actually got the ball in there. So really, since territory was so important, it was good to see that Essendon were at least a little bit respectable. Might have been on the back foot, but I think they had the right ideas most times of the night. It was just execution that was off at times. Obviously, such a young side with Geelong scoring 95 off their 109 points off turnover. It was a bit of a raffle at times in clearances. Both rucks are not really making an impact, which is why I actually thought Big Class was actually used really well as an extra body in the contest, as that's really what just Essendon couldn't quite match. Obviously, in the clearances, it was getting even, but as the game sort of wore on, it was just, it wasn't so much, that they were winning more contests. It's just like there was more coming out of the contests that the Cats won.
Yes.
So, as I said, it didn't really need the most precise rucking. It just needed good ground level contests. High pressure game as well. Very good tackle spread. And so while Geelong did have dominance, it wasn't made all that much easy for them. And this could have been an easy percentage booster, but the Dons just made sure that they didn't make that possible. And as for the Cats, I mean, it's nothing really to worry about. Maybe you could argue like it was a bit concerning that scoring was occasionally easy for Essendon, but I mean, it was still only 65 points at the end of the day, Yeah, probably most disappointing there'll be is that Jeremy Cameron didn't kick 9, instead he kicked 4-5. Yeah, so, I will say this, and this is more of an off-the-cuff conversation. We've been talking about all these impressive Essendon players, and we're talking about players like Blackiston, oh, not so much Blackiston. What's the one up forward? You've got May and McMahon. McMahon was the one up there.
Yes.
Blackiston plays at back. He might be a bit of an iffy player, but who knows for that. Who's else going through the list? Angus Clark is another one that's doing well. Isaac Kako, obviously. You think he'll make the side anyway. But you see all these sort of players. And they're playing all right. The question is would you say that Essendon stick with a lot of these players come next year and maybe not bring in some of the other players? Like there's got a few question mark players right at the moment. Whether that's probably the biggest ones I would say is Dylan Shield for a start. Not confirmed to be signed on. A bit arguable whether he will get another contract. Todd Goldstein, obviously a bit less relevant because they would hope to get Thingo back, and he wasn't in the long-term plans. But
they would have to keep Draper first, considering he's also not fully signed on.
Yeah, I guess so. But I meant, Goldstein isn't long. But even like some players like Jai Menzies, being a bit average on return. What was the other one I was thinking of? Archer Roberts, not really guaranteed the spots. And you're thinking, maybe those are the players that might miss out next season, and some of these players will actually get to keep their spots. It's going to be very interesting list management decisions on the off season. Obviously, there's also players like Laverde, which probably, again, Essendon fans know if their back line wasn't so injured, he probably wouldn't be getting a game. So
the reality of it all.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
because as I said, they're putting in really good efforts. Like, I really think that whilst, like, even next year, that like you couldn't run this core again and expect to be competitive, but you could definitely merge some of this core with the returning stars that should be coming back next year.
Yeah, you'd like to hope that with once the Essendon is finally over their injury issues and get a decent preseason into a lot of their injured players, and even the players that are currently on the park. It'll definitely be interesting to see what kind of shape they take in 2026, because there's 100% there's going to be a couple of players, even players that are still playing right now, that they likely won't keep. I definitely would like to assume that because they drafted him this year, that they would keep Keiko, because he's going to be really good for their forward line.
Oh, I'm not
in a
saying
couple
like
of years.
Keiko. No, like Keiko was like more of the young people. You know what I mean? Like he was probably going to stay because they were invested in him anyway.
Yes.
But I was more talking about like those those less people that have to go for the players like Nick Martin, Harrison Jones, Sam Draper, Caldwell. You'd probably expect to be in. Nick Bryan is probably it once Goldstein goes. Zach Reed, Jordan Ridley. Like, it's a lot of players to fit in, and I don't think all these young players deserve to just be dropped straight away. So it does mean they're going to have to make some tougher calls on some already invested in players. And I think there's some players going to be underrated playing for this season.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a couple. I think when we do our kind of off-season retrospectives, it's definitely going to be very interesting to see where Essendon kind of like rank up compared to the rest of the league, because we know that just purely because of injury, they're probably going to be lower on the list for most stats. But I think there's going to be a couple of surprises in there in terms of what they have been able to accomplish in their quote unquote spirited games against the harder teams.
Yeah. I think, Also, the other one I forgot to push in there is Ash McGrath. He's had a very middling season. He's 27 years old. He's one of those players you think that maybe would have advanced a bit more. Like, you could almost think of, like, maybe you trade some of these players. You know what I mean? Get a bit more value.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't need to hit up the draft, but it's more just, it's about not holding on to too much capital when you've got players coming up underneath you. Be a bit aggressive. You get a bit more back. Maybe get another area filled in. Obviously, they probably still need some key depth because despite getting them back, there was like before the season, their key players were already at point of contention. So, you might just tune up to what you got, really.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see in the next 2 months. 2 months is where we'll see the big changes for Essendon. But until then, I am going to jump over to our individuals. And I apologize to Essendon fans. I forgot to actually write down individuals for the Bombers. I thought I actually had them written down, and I didn't. So I've got Geelong ones here, and I'm just going to wing a couple. So we'll work on that.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with Geelong's ones, of course, because they won the game. Starting with Ollie Dempsey. I thought he was very good with forward pressure, kicking 1-1 from 12 disposals, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles with 5 of them inside 50, and 23 pressure acts. Zach Guthrie was very important defensively. He finished with 16 touches, 15 of them effective, equating to 93.8% efficiency, 7 intercepts, 10 marks, with 5 of them being intercept marks, 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 3 tackles, 15 pressure acts, and 352 meters gained. And then Jack Bowes was very effective with ball movement. He collected 24 disposals, 20 of them effective, equating to 83.3% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, are behind, 3 goal assists, 7 score involvements, 4 tackles, 11 pressure acts, 9 grab ball gets, and 390 meters gained. And just to wing a couple of stats, I'm going to bring up Zach Merritt for the Bombers, who kicked 1-1 from 27 touches, 17 of them effective, equating to 63% efficiency, 12 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 3 marks, 4 inside 50, 6 clearances, 5 score involvements, 10 tackles, 22 pressure acts. Sorry, 4 of those tackles were actually inside 50, so very good forward pressure. 22 pressure acts, 8 ground ball gets, a 1%er, and 586 meters gained. And then, just for another random player, I would just mention Xavier Desmond. Why not? We'll go McMahon.
Kick 4 goals.
Yeah, actually, that is a very good
That's
shout.
Like almost half, isn't it?
That is a very, very good shout. I think I mentioned him last week for kicking like 3 goals or something. So I'm going to mention him again. May as well.
He's been good.
He's been very, very solid pickup. I think he came from a mid-season draft, but was just hampered with injury early on. I can't remember. I did look it up on his profile. I don't think he was this season. I'm pretty sure he was like last season or something. But yeah, he's been very, very good for them so far. He kicked 4-1, from 11 disposals, 8 of them effective, equating to 72.7% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 3 marks, with 2 of them inside 50. He also got 6 score involvements, 4 ground ball gets, a 1%er, and a spoil.
Well, there you go. Apparently, he was a delisted player from Collingwood after being picked 31st in the 2020 draft, but got delisted in 2022 without playing a senior game. So again, a mid-season pickup after playing for another team as well.
There you go.
2025, he was his pickup year.
Oh, so it was this
He
year.
was
Okay.
Yeah, so he got picked up sort of in, I think second pick for Essendon.
Fair enough.
That's what I'd imagine number 18 is. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the injury side of things, Archer May had an ankle concern. I think it's all good, but it might only be minor. Jack Henry came off with hamstring tightness for the Cats. And then Jack Martin was a late out, just purely managed, might have just come up a little bit sore. But thankfully it didn't matter too much for the Cats. On the MRO side of things...
You've got missed a late one, though. Zach Merritt. He's got an injured hand, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yes, that's right. He was a late...
That was announced the day afterwards, so
yeah, that's right.
Is confirmed to at least miss a match.
That's right. There's also another player that I spotted. I can't remember which game it was for, who will miss the match, but we'll talk about that a bit later on if I can remember it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and on the MRO side of things, Dylan Shiel has been referred directly to the tribunal for rough conduct against Mark O'Connor, but he, in the way that it's actually happened is that he pushes a teammate into Mark O'Connor, which causes the whole issue. Again, we're going back to the whole Ryan Mansell thing earlier in the season, where like pushing someone into a harmful contest puts the pusher in the line of sight. So that'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, it will be. It was funny though. Well, not funny, but there was a Port Freo game I was thinking of like that. But there was a contest where I think a Port player accidentally tripped and sort of pushed himself into the contest. And I was thinking, like, to complete the triangle, he should get suspended for pushing himself recklessly into the contest. Just to get one of each.
No, that's sadly that's not going to happen. That's not how that happens.
No. Well, thankfully. It might have been, I can't remember. I just thought it was minorly funny.
And then
thankfully it was a contest where no one got hurt. So.
Yes, thankfully. And then last one, Oyson Mullen was fined $1,000 for striking Zach Merritt. So nothing really of interest too much there on that front.
Yeah, and we do apologise for Geelong fans. We do know that we haven't really been talking about them that much, but I think Geelong fans just know they've been beating up bottom sides for the good, month and a bit now.
Yeah, so. they're just farming percentage at this point for their finals run.
Yeah,
trying to get a home, quote unquote home final at the MCG, because it's not going to be played at Goomba. Everyone knows this.
So if you want, your Stan Geelong breakdown, just go to the best matches. Us breaking down that and just go back to that.
Well, the last kind of bit of note is that everyone expected Cameron to kick a bag, but he kicks 4-5, which is pretty tragic. Everyone wants to see him hit the 100 in the home and away season. He'll probably hit it in finals, but it's not helpful.
Who I mentioned before, Blackiston, he was actually on Cameron, and he was trying. Legitimately, he wasn't doing too bad. He did try and make it hard for him, but, as I said, is Jeremy Cameron. He's playing like an absolute beast at the moment. So.
Absolutely.
No, maybe it's just one of those things where, that it may have been, not as much pressure, but the effort of Blackiston may have prevented it from being a 9-goal haul, but, definitely matchup-wise, he knew it was going to be at least a solid for you.
Yeah.
Not like 4's anything to scoff at these days.
No, 4 is still impressive, but it's Jeremy Cameron. Everyone just wants him to kick these bags.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our Saturday games, starting with the first one at the MCG, Richmond hosting St Kilda, and with a 4-point margin, St Kilda run away with it at 8-8-56 to 7-10-52.
And look, if you tuned into the last 5 minutes of the game, you probably had the best experience. It wasn't actually the last 5 minutes. It was a bit earlier because I had a bit of a recap. There was a bit of a lull at the end.
Yeah.
But as I said, apart from that last quarter, though, and that was only bits of it, it was otherwise a fairly skill-riddled game that saw very feast of famine change from the back half for St Kilda. And for Richmond, it was sort of pressure amounting to ping-pong football more than it was actual score from turnover. The ball was just going in between these two sides, a lot of the game being played on the wing, which did probably stay in St Kilda a bit more. They played a lot of this game for the back half, but they couldn't advance the ball. Meanwhile, Richmond had good outside pressure, but very mediocre transitions, so they couldn't actually get the ball from the wings into the forward line but often, which meant that both defenses had a pretty solid day because there wasn't that much threatening to defend. Most of the chain sort of dealt with themselves before getting down there, and when they did, they pretty easily dealt with it. The Saints had the problem of not generating enough ground pressure to generate shots, while Richmond had the problem, as I mentioned earlier, of not getting enough direct entries from their shots, which, as I mentioned, caused the scoring to be an absolute crawl. This was not a good game to watch, even if you're a fan of these two teams, except for maybe the ending if you're a St Kilda fan. But yeah, at the end of the game, there was effort between these two teams. It's not like they weren't trying. But I think the ironic thing is, despite Richmond having more veteran talent in their side, funnily enough, Richmond were actually the older of the two teams. When you go player by player, it felt in the big moments, it was St Kilda's big core dragging them across the line, whilst Richmond was scrapping as the young kids were trying to make their moments, but not always getting the results they wanted. As they had a solid grasp of winning the game. I think Blaze will probably break down the last few minutes as much as he wants to, but yeah, they just couldn't get it done. St Kilda left the door ajar. It was definitely only bits of pieces that were working for them, but as I said, those bits ended up being enough.
Yeah, it was only just enough for them. If Macca did not run too far, it could have been a different story in that final minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just one of those things, it was, as I said, it was just one of those things where, yeah, as I said, the veteran talent for St Kilda in terms of, like, I'm talking about Steele, I think Marshall by stats had a pretty good game.
Marshall had a decent ruck game. He managed to get, I think he was better around the ground over Nankervis, but Nankervis won mostly in the ruck contest, as he normally does. Cal Wilkie also had a fantastic game as per normal. Sinclair was very good.
Nasiah, of course.
And of course, Naz. When does Naz not do good things? Let's be real.
Yeah, well, as I said, like, he is a very feast of famine with his scoring chains, but he still averages more good scoring chains than most players, especially considering the players he has around him. So
agreed. And again, I didn't mention it in my my player mentions, but I think the Flying Viking, Alex Toru, was phenomenal in their defense. He was very good on intercept. He's already molding very well into a very strong defensive player. But yeah, it's like there's a lot to like about St Kilda at the moment.
Well, not so much their finished product, but you know what I mean. It's like, as I said, there's bits and pieces that's still plodding along. Like,
oh yeah, there's
it's
definitely
really just their forward line that's absolutely capitulated. Like, their forward line looked as bad as Richmond on any given day. Like, there wasn't that much difference between them in the grand scheme of things. So,
yeah, Mason Wood wasn't as impactful as he normally is. Cooper Sharman managed only 2 goals. Jack Higgins, I think, only got 1-1. Or it might have been 2-1, something like that. Like, it was very low scoring affair from their forward line. And again, like, that you would think that someone like Naz would have maybe tried to step up and move a little bit more, shuffle a little bit more forward. But I think I don't remember who was playing on him, but I think we managed to kind of keep him in check in terms of being able to float in that rotation at least.
Yeah. As I said, he had like a lot more handball receives than contested possession, so he probably was like keeping reasonably held, but only one clearance as well. So one of those things where it's like once he gets forward of the ball, it's so hard to stop because, as I said, off the half back, feast or famine. Like, that's again, we said the problem with Naz before, like with his impact. It's like, well, sure you can move it up the field, but Saints don't have the firepower to do anything with it. Whereas now he's linking up to forward targets and almost making them be better than they are.
Mm.
And I know that's a bit offensive because someone like Max Holes has some fairly good moments in that forward line, despite being a fairly just a player. Jack Higgins also scored a couple, despite not really looking that threatening, from what I heard.
He didn't really feel like he was doing much. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean. It's like sometimes you need a player like from the outside to just force you. Like some kicks can almost create a lead. And I think that's like a skill that Nasai has as well. So, yeah. So as I said, 4 inside 50s and 3 goals assists as well for him. So
Yeah,
very important to that. But
his value continues to rise, which means it's going to be
exactly.
going to continue to be a bit of a price on his head for St Kilda to pay. Otherwise, he's just going to find somewhere else to go.
Yeah. I was saying, because I'm not meant to be making your taking your individual stats away from you. I'm more saying a lot of St Kilda's good forward line play actually came from above the field.
Yes.
Which was a bit concerning, because obviously they didn't play that well. But sometimes that's all you need. It was just very concerning that Richmond almost made a more impressive offensive performance.
It would have been nice, but alas. But moving on to the individuals. Sorry, excuse me. I will start with the 200 gamer and the captain, Jack Steele. Absolutely solid pressure around the ground, finishing with 17 disposals, 15 of them effective, equating to 88.2% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 8 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 5 scoring vomits, 10 tackles, and 15 pressure acts. Cal Wilkie was very important in defense. He was on point with his movements, with his intercepts. Was phenomenal as someone who loves watching defensive plays. He was phenomenal. Sadly, it was against Richmond, so not as phenomenal for me. But he finished with 29 touches, 28 of them effective, equating to 96.6% efficiency. 9 intercepts, 16 marks, 5 of them being intercept marks. 5 scoring involvements, 3 1%ers, 455 meters gained, and 100% time on ground. 20 almost 30 touches and 100% time on ground is surely unheard of. Like that, I feel like that's
that. For a key defender, maybe.
Yeah, it's not really something you see very often.
Yeah, I don't actually know he was on. I obviously didn't watch that match. It says here Bolter. I'm not sure how much that's.
He was definitely a bit on Bolter, probably a bit on Lynch. Maybe Camp might have touched a bit on Campbell as well. We didn't have all our tolls out there. Fall and Sims were both out, so we're mostly running with those two.
It seems like he was rotating at the very least. So
yeah,
but he's still fairly accountable. It's not like the tolls at Richmond were running away from.
No, like we did the best that we could, right? It's not much to ask for, but
yeah, that's what I was saying. It's like it wasn't just a play loose intercept defender sort of thing. Like he was always like making sure he won the contest.
Yes.
And then still made the most of it afterwards.
Very right. Max Hall continues to be very solid, kicking 1-1 from 14 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 4 marks with 2 of them inside 50, 3 scoring involvements, 5 tackles, 19 pressure acts, and then rising star Hugh Boxall performed very well, finishing with 14 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 92.9% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 5 marks, 8 tackles, 70 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. Over on the Richmond side of things, Dion Prestia competed hard in the midfield, finishing with 18 touches, 9 contested possessions, 7 clearances, 4 tackles with 2 of them inside 50, and 16 pressure acts. And then Jack Ross was excellent at ground level, collecting 26 disposals, 21 of them effective, equating to 80.8% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 6 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 clearances are behind, 7 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, 10 grab ball gets, and 440 meters gained. And thankfully, no one was injured, and there are no MRO reports.
Yeah, because as I said, I think the sooner to move on from this game, the sort of better. For Richmond, it wasn't quite as bad. For Saints, it is sort of like frustrating because like in the grand scheme of things, like they've played the last half of the season well. They've finally got some more even matchups. They've won most of them. They've actually been pretty solid, winning the games that they should be winning this year. Obviously, it's the games that they get blown out, which are really concerning. And obviously, the one random loss to West Coast.
Yes.
So I don't know. It just must be very frustrating switching on the TV and you're like, well, the Saints could have this, but you could get like a really exciting one like Melbourne, St Kilda, or you could just get this game.
Yeah, pretty much. It could be. You could either get a 50-50 game, where you could play abysmally, or you get a 50-50 game where you just clinch out.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I said, still they're above Port on the ladder. That's something.
I don't know if it's something
Yeah.
for you, but it's something.
Not really, but again, we'll talk about that later. As I said, they had a pretty tough fixture, and it's at least good for their team to like figure out where they actually are. And I think this is a bit more of a reflection. But yeah, I still wouldn't call them a good, exciting team to watch.
No, but there are some positive signs to look forward to, at least for Saints fans.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump over to our next game, going up to Brisbane at the Gabba, of course, where the Lions host the Swans, and with a 2-point margin, the Swans took it home, finishing 13-14-92 to 13-12-90.
Yes, and there are two people, Gil Scott Heron and the Brisbane Lions being people apparently, do know that true pains can sometimes be in the place you call home, because they have recorded their 4th loss this season at the Gabba, their 5th loss in Queensland as well, because obviously did lose an away game, but it was in Queensland to the Gold Coast. And yeah, it was to a team that was quite happy to get revenge, and a very bittersweet win. Because this win technically kept the fleeting finals hopes alive for Sydney, but only for a second, because the other results have finally ruled them out of finals contention. But this game ebbed and flowed. Scoring wasn't particularly hard for either team, but Sydney got Brisbane on the outer to make them, defensively on the outer, I should say, making them kick a massive 22 shots from beyond 40 metres from goal, which is why they kicked, and they kicked 7-11 from this, which contributed to their minor inaccuracy. Whilst Sydney had a plethora of easier shots, they just couldn't quite convert as they should, which made this a nail-biting contest because both teams had offensive dominance, both teams had some defensive woes. But as I said, so it was the clearance work from Brisbane that really set them up. But Sydney, at the end of the day, played their players to better effect, pushed them up the ground when needed, and highlighted the fact that Heaney had another absolute hole and is all but locked in for being his team's highest goal scorer for the year. To put it in perspective, he had a very good goal scoring year last year and finished 6th for Sydney. So, it's a bit of, positive or negative depending on how you want to take it, whether that's a bad thing that is leading that. Blakey and Andrews both had solid intercept games down back, as both balanced shutting down their opponents with solid rebound generation. The Brisbane, as I mentioned, had their offensive game going for sure, but with their defensive woes, all Sydney had to do was work out the outside transition with good link-up handballs and solid ground ball representation and entries, whilst Brisbane were, stuck a bit on default. As I said, they were very direct. They were still getting scores, but I do think that for the majority of the game, it wasn't really that conducive of all that much until obviously that last 3 minutes where they scored 3 goals off of the back of some great clearance work, almost got them across the line. But it wasn't to be. And as for the Lions, it might be not a bad idea if they never ever went home again. And with the top 4 spot in jeopardy, it might just be the case. And they might have to find their premiership defence without a double chance.
Yeah, it's really interesting that in comparison to last year, the Gabba's not become their fortress anymore. It's become a place where they apparently lose more than they win.
I still think they would win more than they lose. I don't know how many games they've had in the Gabba, but it's just the majority. It's like what? The seven of their 6 losses, is it?
Something like that,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. All right, we'll put it 7 non-wins. 6 of them have been in the state of Queensland. That's pretty crazy. Um, Obviously Melbourne teams do it all the time, but there's so many more Melbourne teams.
Yeah, it's unfair kind of assessment because of
Yeah,
location.
as there for a team like Brisbane, who are pretty solid. Like normally it's Sydney that uh, not that great at home anymore, but yeah, as I said, it's got onto Brisbane. Maybe it's just a quirk, who knows? But I guess the real thing to take back is again that Brisbane defense. We've been saying it for the last month. Even in the matches they've won, it's looked a bit exposed, and I know they'll get a few players back, but if it doesn't click together, as I said, it makes them a lot more vulnerable than they were looking this time last year, even though
Agreed.
technically they're on more wins.
Do you think it
Um,
has? You think part of it has to do with not really having the Big O out there?
oh man, I don't think Fort's been particularly bad. I mean, they've been dominating the clearances. Around the ground, it's a bit of a drop off, but I don't think Oscar McInerney was particularly having uh, the best year. I just think it's a bit more. Um, Honestly, I think part of it is again with some of the injuries that they've got this year, they've had to be very proactive. Let's say to protect their defense. You know what I mean? Like they've had to generate intercepts above the ground. But Sydney are a very disciplined team with their ball movement. They didn't cough up too many turnovers. They won the intercept count 72-63 in this particular game. I think score off turnovers for Brisbane was relatively low as well. Yeah, 65-49. So you know what I mean? Like if Brisbane aren't intercepting, they're generally letting stuff through, and their defense isn't that great. Like everything forward of the ball is still fine. As I said, it's just yeah, as I said, it's. I mean, they're almost you got to view them in the same way as the Bulldogs at this point.
Yeah,
Like before, you could rely on their defense a bit more, but for right now, they are relying a lot more on the forward half effort to protect that defense. And as I said, while their movement has at times been a lot better, not so much this game, their pure defense hasn't been, at least for the last month. So, um, yeah, as I said, not the worst thing. It's still workable, and it's not like they've been playing particularly too badly. But in terms of for the immediate future, it is very concerning because it does put that double chance, which looked I wouldn't say secure, but still likely into the now probably unlikely category, I would say. You're missing Neil until the finals. Probably may or may not get Leicester back in the next couple of weeks.
mm-hmm.
Even that wouldn't be like the biggest thing because, all the rest of the defensive injuries long term in terms of Jack Payne and Noah Answorth. So, yeah, as I said, I think it's just one of those things. They got to I don't know if they even have enough time to figure it out, but they need to figure out, I guess, how do you maintain ruthless consistency? Because, as I said, whilst they did have a lot of things going for Sydney, I do think that, as I said, when it's going the other way so easily, sometimes you got to just do a bit more. I know it's tough when you're still scoring a great amount of points. But you're just going to be a sieve if you play like that. And we've seen it in a lot of games they've played. They've conceded a lot of points and kept some pretty average-looking teams in it, unless they've gone full sicko mode on the intercept game.
Yeah, agreed. What are your thoughts on Charlie Cameron not having kicked a goal in the past 9 games? Because I just brought up his stats over at least during this
Oh,
game,
he's had a
and he's got six touches, a behind, and 20 pressure acts. So 20 pressure acts is good because it means he's providing forward pressure. But where is
yeah.
the rest? Where is the rest of the effort?
Well, again, like man, you got to ask is like, if Kyle Oman comes back, does he actually take Cameron's spot? Because I mean, it depends. Because like that forward mix seems to be working well. I know Henry Smith didn't have a very good game, but Leicester's still looking very solid. Hipwood's probably been on better form. Not so much last game in his career, but you know what I mean. So it's very hard because again, they can work a lot on the outside. Like again, it might actually be a symptom of Brisbane not playing that deep. Like they haven't gotten it deep as often. They've played a lot from the high wing. So maybe it's because they're playing a slightly different style. But you can't just have such a quality player being so pretty much anemic in the side, really. Because then it's just like, well, why don't you just, shuffle it to get more of that, pressure where it's needed? Because as I said, it's just wasting confidence. Especially if other teams work out that. It's like you can't be just then relying on Charlie Cameron going so cold in. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's the best for them. I don't think it's a make or break problem, but it's just another minor concern for a Lions team that like looks good still, but there's so many minor problems compared to the back end of last year.
Great. It is definitely a little concerning, especially when you feel like you can get so much more out of Charlie Cameron, but the issue is like if you push him further up the ground, does he have the pace and the legs still to be able to keep up in that midfield? Like that's not an
The
ideal
thing is,
situation to
like,
really think about. Whereas that's where you would probably prefer to have
yeah.
Loman if he's fit.
No, well, that's what I said. It's like he is that deep player, and you still need that representation. As you mentioned, just in terms of pure pressure, I don't think there's anyone really in Brisbane side that would play that role.
No, I think in terms of pressure, he's doing well, but it feels like there's a lack of effort elsewhere.
No, as I said, I think it's just a mixture of like in this game, the Tolls really didn't get involved except for what's his name?
Hipwood?
Unless I'm wrong, he did score a couple, didn't he?
I think Hipwood
Logan
had a
Morris,
decent game. Logan Morris did have a decent game.
but it's like like Logan Morris took his marks, only 6 possessions, and kick goals. But you know what I mean? It's like it didn't really seem like they had really good ability to bring the ball around in their forward half. So a lot of their marks were taken in the back half of the ground. So it's very hard to do. I don't know how good they were on ground level. I only saw bits of this game in the back line. Sydney's back line, Brisbane's forward line, but clearly it wasn't enough to get him involved in the game.
No, I guess not. But let's jump over to the individuals now. And one player who pretty much had full control of the game is Isaac Heaney. He put out all of the stops in the Sydney midfield, kicking 5 goals, 1 from 23 disposals, 9 contested possessions, 6 marks with 3 of them inside 50, 3 inside 50s, 3 clearances, 10 score involvements, and 387 metres gained. Errol Goulden was very impressive on the outside, finishing with 29 touches, 5 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 9 score involvements, 4 tackles, 15 pressure acts, 497 metres gained. And then young gun Angus Sheldrick was prolific throughout the ground, kicking 1-2 from 26 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 5 marks, 7 inside 50s, 3 goal assists, 11 score involvements, 17 pressure acts, and 591 metres gained. Over on the Brisbane side of things, Levi Ashcroft was solid around the ball, kicking 1-1 from 27 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 6 marks, 6 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 4 score involvements, 22 pressure acts, 10 ground ball gets, 495 metres gained. And then co-captain Harris Andrews did so much in defence, as he normally does. He's very dependable. He collected 20 disposals, 19 of them effective, equating to 95% efficiency, 15 intercepts, 11 marks, 7 of them being intercept marks, 4 score involvements, 10 1%ers, and 9 spoils. On the injury side of things, Justin McInerney went out with a knee injury. I don't think it's too bad, but we'll find out when injury lists are updated. And then Brodie Grundy was confirmed a late concussion and will not be playing this weekend.
Yeah, it's not much I want to talk about since we did put a lot of talk into it, but I do want to give a man a shout out, and I'm sure you would if you might have just forgotten. Tom Duday.
Yes.
First game for Brisbane. First game in 2 years.
Yes, that's right.
Obviously, only 10 possessions, a minor impact, but I think we've sort of forgotten how good he was because he burst on the scene very early for Adelaide, and I know he hasn't got his body right, but he still is only 28. So if Brisbane can eke a bit out of him, he might be a player that builds up and maybe makes up for the loss of Answorth. Was it Answorth? I can't remember. I always mix
Uh,
up those two.
I think
Yeah,
it's
it is
Answorth.
Answorth
Yeah.
that they lost.
Yeah, he could fit that role. Just give him a bit of time again. 2 years is a long time to not be playing at the highest level,
Oh yeah.
and especially with him being a little bit injury prone at the time. It's just gonna ease him back into it. This is probably one of the harder games to really ease him into, but hopefully with time, he who knows, maybe he might be like the make or break finals player. Who knows? But it
Well, you never
could be
know, as
very
I said.
interesting.
Sometimes it just takes a run at the right time, and he's definitely a bit of a surprise packet, that's for sure. Definitely got a lot of talent.
Absolutely.
As I said, very good very early when he was at the Crows, as just said. Injured at his last year at the Crows, went to Brisbane, and just couldn't get going with 2 ACLs, I think.
Yeah, it was very, very rough for him. All right, let's jump over to our next game, heading back down to Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, where Carlton hosts the Gold Coast Suns, and with a 19-point margin, the Suns win out 13-15-93 to 11-8-74.
Yeah, and I didn't watch this game. Obviously, I was focused on another one. But really, it was a comfortable-ish game for the Suns. But a massive swing in the Carlton's favour in the last quarter. I almost got them across the line. But overall, the strength of Gold Coast transition and outside movement to get them off inside 50 set them up quite comfortably. Scrappy team for both teams' forward lines. I know Suns scored 93, but obviously not quite the best conversion ever. And Long and King were really the only consistent factors there. Where on the other side, what was I going to say? Yeah, on the other side, in terms of the key forwards, it was a very interesting battle between Collins and McKay. I think both really had a mixed bag tussles. Both had dominant bits of the games, and both also got beaten by the direct oppositions at times. So really, it was very much surprising to see Carlton led by finally ground pressure, and Frankie Evans of all people capitalised for. Honestly, not really their MO. It was interesting to see that's what was sort of bringing this comeback to life. The midfield battle was also a bit interesting. Cooper Lord actually tagged Anderson and did a really good job. But the negative for the Carlton was obviously Cripps. Apparently had a very banged up shoulder and wasn't quite his usual self. Got a lot of disposals, but not quite that useful with all that much. In the end, though, Rowell and Miller helped the Suns edge out and score more in the contest. Sorry, not contest, clearance. 65 points all up, despite it being a very even contest clearance-wise, and that was the case for me. But at the end, the lack of composure from the Suns will be a bit of a worry because it was turnovers from lazy possessions that left the door open for the Blues. Although it might be dangerous to slow the game down early, I think this was actually a case where Gold Coast probably could have, because they were just, I wouldn't say they were reckless, but it was definitely one of the things where pressure would have mounted a bit more for Carlton if they just took a bit of time with their mark, because they were clearly outmarking him. But it's just once they weren't hitting up their wider targets, and it exposed themselves massively when the ball didn't go to ground, because Carlton were, and this was the same all night, hunting. It's just that they only really had the opportunities in the last quarter. Still, it was enough to score the win. It wasn't like the Blues weren't trying or woeful as some of the previous games. I just think this is one of those games where the Suns probably need another lesson in steadying the ship. They've been pretty bold and pretty good all game, but this is just one of those things where it's like, hey, it's late season. There's a bit on the line. You just need a bit better composure to just swing those into the better favour, because they did leave the. Again, it wasn't really in danger, but it felt like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's it was a little concerning that the Blues did actually get as close as they did to the Suns, just after seeing the kind of performances the Suns could really have against the quote-unquote lower teams. But the fact that the Carlton have finally found themselves in a position where they look good. Like they've got a decent forward line back up again. Thankfully, they have Mackay. It's not ideal. Obviously, there's still so many parts that they could work on.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have at least one of their key pillars up there is important.
Yeah, I think it's more just their finding because, as I said, it was very inconsistent. Like they did have only they still had a 2 goal and a 1 goal quarter in the middle, where
Oh
it's
yeah,
like 3 goals for a
that
half.
that
Not the
that kind
best.
of situation is kind of like Richmond, where you can't play a second and third quarter, but can play the first and the fourth.
Yeah, I just think it's like more. It feels like Carlton have at least set themselves up to be a bit more opportunistic, which is unfortunately ironic because they don't have as many toll options available for them now. They have a bit of the opposite problem from last year where they had a lot of toll but not much ground pressure except
Yeah,
for Always and Kennedy, who have now obviously both moved on.
yeah. So like they've lost a bit of depth, obviously, in that off season, and they haven't really found the right pieces to fill them yet. They're probably going to hopefully retool that kind of situation in this off season. Their defense definitely could still use a bit of work. There's eyes on Silvani potentially leaving, so they want to try and nail him back down and keep him in their
Mm.
defense. They want to again. They need to retool their forward line again. Frankie Evans being a surprising push up forward is good for them. That's something they can work
Not a
around.
surprising push up forward, but surprising that he did that much impact in otherwise a fairly
Well,
moderate career. Like as far as I can
that
tell, this
too.
is his best game ever. So
And then obviously you have like a youngster like Cooper Lord, playing a little bit of a tagging role, something a little bit different that we weren't really expecting to see from someone like him early on. Is good for them as
yeah,
well. Again,
and it
that's
went
another
both
developing
ways
tool.
too.
Yeah, that's right.
He
He's
was
able
still
to
good on
play
offense.
both directions. It's fantastic, and that's something that they can continue to build around, especially when you've got Cripps who could potentially. Well, he'll probably end up playing out the season, but like as he gets older, his injuries might start perking up again.
Yeah,
Have to take some time out. That sort of stuff. You have a player like Cooper Lord
well,
who
he
can
might be
potentially fill
rested
that
next
role.
week. It's like
Um,
no finals, and he did have that little niggle early, so you wouldn't
true,
blame him.
true. Like you could potentially just rest him for the rest of the season. There's not really too much they
Yeah,
need to play for right now. Um, but yeah,
yeah,
the fact
exactly.
that they have found a player like Lord who can play defensively, play offensively, play a tagging role, play a fast role. He's already kind of shown multiple facets of his game. It's just about refining some of that
Mm.
into being a player similar to Matt Rowell in the sense that he can play both ways, can be a clearance player, can be a pressure player. You want to start
Yeah,
developing someone like that. And I know that Sam Walsh was originally touted to have that kind of role, but he's shifted recently into something a little bit different. Probably with the loss of
mm.
Kennedy, that probably hasn't helped. Um, so it's just about finding those little bit of retooling moments and redefining some of your players' roles going into the
Yeah,
last two
because
games in the
you
off
know
season.
it's a bit weird considering that unlike Essendon, like Carlton have made finals for the last. I was going to say the last couple of years. It's only been.
They
Oh no,
barely
this
made it
last couple
last
of
year, to
years.
be fair.
Yeah, I know, but a lot of injuries. But they're looking to be like, well, we've got a lot of young kids that are doing like okay, and the few to fit in the future. It's like who do we think of like putting out of the team? And there's a few question marks on a few of the. I would maybe say a few of the older players, but obviously someone like Zach Williams like might just decide to retire because of body issues. But
Mm.
you know what I mean? It's like they've got a lot of mid-range players that aren't quite getting the job done. So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of this off season, I think Carlton and Essendon will be the two big teams to keep an eye on in terms of how they kind of
Yeah, they
reshuffle.
might. I don't think Carlton will be a rebuild, but there definitely should be a tonal shift because, as I said, it's not so much the older players; it's more those mid-range players like maybe Lockie Fogarty, probably even Blake Acres hasn't
Yeah,
been that good for a little while. Jesse Motlop, I know he had an okay game that one, but he's been a very up and down player. So yeah, players like that. Obviously Silvani, if he leaves, you need to be making that whole field in. So that'll be interesting.
definitely. But in terms of like the Suns side of things, I won't say they're lucky to not let this game slip away from them, but it's definitely one of the worst performances out of like some of the more dominant ones that they've had.
Yeah, not the worst for the season, but a bit disappointing nonetheless.
Yeah. And the 4 points is still good for them. Keeps them, in touch
Yeah.
with the top eight, of course. Potentially still vying for a top four spot. It's still, again, everything's still up in the air. But I will touch
Yeah.
on the individuals now, starting with another 200 gamer for this week in Jared Witts. He was very dominant in the ruck this week, getting 49 hitouts, 12 of them to advantage, and a goal. We love a 200 game goal. From 15 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 4 clearances, 6 score involvements, 3 tackles, 4 1%ers, 4 spoils. Took Miller was very solid with movement, finishing with 25 touches, 14 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 clearances, a behind, 10 score involvements, 7 tackles, 19 pressure acts, and 12 ground ball gets. And then young key defender Oscar Adams was very dependable in defense, collecting 5 disposals, 4 intercepts, 6 1%ers, and 4 spoils. Over on the Carlton side of things, Cooper Lord was a pressure machine, finishing with 24 touches, 10 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 7 score involvements, 12 tackles, 18 pressure acts, and 431 meters gained. Again, those stats are a very good indicator of the fact that he played 2 ways. Very, very solid from him. And then Frankie Evans was important around the ground, but mostly up forward, kicking 4 goals from 16 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 81.3% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 inside 50s, 2 goal assists, 7 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and 466 meters gained. Then just briefly on the MRO side of things, Cooper Lord was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. It has returned.
Yeah, it has returned. But yeah, as I said, it's sort of, yeah, it's, I don't know. I think the only thing that's really a takeout worry for this game is like the drop off of the tall forward output um that isn't king along, because they do play a lot of forward. So you know what I mean? It's, as much as it was awkward, it wasn't just, like lack of pressure or whatever. Like they weren't playing a very big pressure structure system.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So, as I said, they just got to figure it out. The exact tall forward lineup, but they still scored 13-15. So, yeah, that's just more of an open ended question for them, but I'd still take the win.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
pretty fine. Every other aspect of the ground in terms of like midfield movement, outside movement sometimes drops off, and their defense is still pretty solid. So
Yeah, that's right. All right, time to jump over to our last Saturday game. But before we do, there was a little bit of breaking news just before, and we're going to touch on it now because it relates to one of these two teams with Docker's great, Docker's hero in some cases, Nat Fyfe announcing his retirement at season's end.
yeah, and honestly, we're gonna give it like a mini breakdown now, aren't we? Because I accidentally closed the
Yes. Yeah, we'll do a mini breakdown.
yeah, cool. Yeah, so just loading up his stats now, but obviously Fife, when you first saw him, and I obviously first saw him, you would not believe that this kid was a 191 footballer that was, sort of touted to be maybe a forward, maybe a midfielder, because he just looks so skinny. Picked round to pick 20 of the 2009 national draft from Freo. And I think he took a while to debut. I don't think he debuted until 11. I need to see the stats. I've just got them up now. I just need to put it on career. 2010. Okay. So, I don't know, pretty much straight away. But yeah, 18 games on debut and a very decent season, averaging 16 disposals. But I think played a bit more as a forward. But then pretty much straight away after that, his disposal skyrocketed. He became one of the best clearance winners in the game. And it wasn't just his clearance winning ability, it was his ability to take marks. Whether it being contested marks or marks on lead, they were both absolutely fantastic. And I know we know Nat Fyfe, especially from his 2007 years onwards, as like a clearance midfielder, absolutely dominating that. But you forgot he started really well on the wing. He was actually good in that early phase of Docker's transition. He would have been a really good player if he could kick a goal too. He had absolutely great marking hands. Unfortunately, was a terrible set shot for goal. Finished with 178 goals, 146 behinds, but I think a lot of his set shots he missed, unfortunately. But also great tackling pressure, and obviously a dual Brownlee.
Yes.
And you'll go through his accolades, but there's not many things that he couldn't do forward of the ball. Sometimes his two-way running was called into question, but especially at the time in the early days, Fremantle had accountants for that, and he was just able to run, and it made for some of the. I think some of the best midfield matchups that we've ever seen was peak Fyfe against peak Dangerfield. They had a couple of games where both were nearing 40 disposals and getting involved in a lot of scoring plays. So, unfortunately, in the 2020s, he was very injury prone.
Mm-hmm.
Had 1 year where he missed a season in 2016. Only played 5 games, but it's just with his sort of frame, it was always going to be a bit hard because he played so reckless. Big body, but as I said, 94 kilos, but a lot of that would be muscle. Like he would be one of the leaner players because he definitely looks skinny. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
especially early on in his career.
He might not be the tallest guy in the world, definitely not, but he was probably one of the strongest midfielders to really be able to just, despite all of his injuries, he always wanted to play risk first, ball first, no matter what happened, no matter who got in his way, and that's what
that was the thing.
That's what made him stand out so much.
And he was really a dip and diver. And again, going back to his marks too, like they weren't tall people marks; they were small forward marks, just played by a big man. So, as I said, only 33 years of age, 245 games, but you could tell the way he played did limit his career, but geez, he's made his career so much impactful. And, as I said, almost made it to the, almost the style of play that got them to a grand final.
Mm-hmm.
Could have won it if they kicked accurately. They really did have it was probably the closest of the Hawthorn grand finals by memory, in terms of teams being in it. So, unlucky there, but a great club servant, probably the best peak of a Fremantle player. I still think you would take the career of Pavlich, but Nathan Fyfe probably has had some of the best years in the purple jerseys.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely touted to be one of the most decorated players of Freo's history. Obviously, with Pav probably still being the number one player in that regard. But there's nothing you can really say that's negative necessarily about Nat Fyfe. He was always a team player. He was always so kind and polite, both in media, on field, and off. He was just one of the great men of the AFL. It's kind of hard to say. And as much as I would have loved
to say,
as much as I would have loved to possibly try to bring him over to Richmond because he was a Richmond boy growing up, I think it was always right for him to be a one club player with Freo and to just really live out a decorated career in the purple.
Yeah, I was gonna just joke around. Like the one thing is, I saw in the West they had like all the faces of Fyfe, including that that Younger Days. And I will say, the one biggest misstep was when he cut his hair short and grew out that like mo. I forgot about it, but anytime Fyfe cut his hair, I reckon he played worse. But you know what? A bit like Samson in that regard. Probably peak hair of the AFL though. I don't know. I don't think there's any player that's more consistently had a better haircut, in my opinion.
Potentially.
So I just thought I'd put it in there. Don't know if that's controversial or not. Some people don't like the Fyfe cut, but I don't know. It just suits it because again, it's a Wharfie team and he has a surface haircut, so it just makes sense.
I don't mind it. Just touching on his honours though. He was obviously Brownlow medalist for 2015, 2019, best and fairest 2013, 2014, 2019, second runner-up best and fairest 2011 and 2020, third place in 2017 and 2018, All Australian in 2014, 15, and 19, where he was also captain. Part of the squad of 44 in 2011, 2013, 2020. Played in the 2017 International Rules Series, won the Jim Steins Medal in 2017, Players Association MVP in 2014, 2015, Rising Star nominee in 2010, was their captain from 2017 to 2022, and earned 190 total career votes in the Brownlow Medal.
Yeah, and I think the only last thing I want to mention is that in terms of career, another sliding doors moment was debuted on the same year. Wasn't the most exciting draft pick from that 2009 draft. Michael Barlow. There would be a massive sliding doors. Obviously Michael Barlow broke his leg in the first season. Imagine if those two played together and had peak healthy bodies. That would probably change the trajectory of the Dockers season.
Absolutely.
You're probably a bit too young to remember, but his 2020 debut, those first 13 games are probably the best from any rookie I've seen in terms of just pure skill. Especially coming, I think he was a rookie draft player.
Potentially.
Yeah, so yeah, no. Two rookie drafts. He was pick 8 in 2009 and then also picked up in the 2010 national draft.
That's right. Okay.
So, yeah.
Enough. So, even though he does have 2 games and potentially a final series to play out, we will salute you, Nat Fyfe, and we hope you have a well-earned rest post AFL. But it's time to jump actually over to the game itself that we are meant to be talking about.
Yeah.
Back over
And as much
at the.
as it.
I haven't done the score yet. Settle down.
I know.
Over at the Adelaide Oval, where Port Adelaide hosted the Dockers, of course, and with a 6-point margin, Freo win out 13-14, 92 to 13-8, 86.
Yes, and so we've talked at length about this brave new Freo side. Almost came unstuck as their Wolf brethren were making life very difficult for Freo. It wasn't so much early as a defensive clinic by Cox and Pearce in the first quarter, kept Port goalless. Shai Bolton looked to continue his very good run against Port. Blaze would probably know he tends to lit it up against Port.
Yeah, he matched up. For some reason, he just matched up very well against Port every time.
Yeah.
I don't really know why.
I vaguely remember a time where he kicked like 5 behinds against us, and I was like, man, we would have lost by so much more. Could kick straight. But the unimaginable happened as the offensively inept Port scored an 8-1 quarter to hit the lead at halftime. Port's biggest score in a quarter for the year, as probably both coaches at halftime were getting the wrenches out to try and adjust and stop the scoring leak from stoppages. Freo, this was a very big point of concern because for the entire night, Port only got 25 clearances but managed 8-2 from stoppage, meaning that 40% of clearances resulted in points, or to make it even more specific, 32% of Port's clearances resulted in a goal, which is, pretty efficient. But with the youth and depth on the list exposed due to injury, Port's bigger bodies stood out in this match. Aaliyah had a fantastic game. Ollie Wines, Boak, Zach Thatcher, Butters, and Connor Rosie, who was pushed forward pretty unsighted in the first half, but it was revealed that he had an injured hand and did some very clutch things late. They all tried their hardest to get things going for Port, and it really seemed like things would go their way. It was a very mixed bag umpiring affair. There were a lot of controversial decisions. It went both ways, but for the majority of the night, it did seem to go Port's favour more often than not. But despite all this, a solid third quarter for the Ports came unstuck 2 ways. The first one was the 2 goals in the quarter scored by Murphy Reid. Freo looked off offensively in that quarter, but Reid just kicked 2 goals out of nowhere from very tough positions to make up for an otherwise inaccurate Freo. If Reid doesn't kick those 2 games, Port go on and win this, in my opinion. They just look very comfortable. And the other thing, the injuries in the third quarter. Zerk Thatcher started hobbling around. Lukosius did another knee injury before 3-quarter time. And it sort of gave that nervous Purple Army. And tell me if you've seen it all before. It was once again the big men to an angry and slighted Voss slotted 2 in the last quarter, told the crowd to shut it as he had a big impact. And although Rosie did port in front by a point with a few minutes left, the stoppage coin flip turned into Fremantle's favour thanks to a midfield Fyfe injection. He really, although like the midfield was porous all night, Fyfe got the most out of the clearances. I wouldn't say it's like a bad. I think actually, yeah, I will say it was a bad game. Freo's midfield. I know they were good offensively, but I think it like Port weren't looking that great in transition. So if they weren't so bad, would have not been in it at all. So I do think they've got to be a bit more defensively accountable. I think Brayshaw and I reckon O'Meara were probably the 2 biggest liabilities. Brayshaw, it's a lot rarer. Obviously, you know, O'Meara you're not expecting 2-way running. It's just a bit surprising he was matched up against Zach Butters. I would have thought that they might have even considered a tagger. Maybe Bailey Banfield, he wasn't having a great game. Not to be. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Don't scroll down in that case.
For what?
For the 2 players that you just mentioned.
Have you written them in your thing?
I have.
Well, you watched the other game, to be fair, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Like on the stats, like they were offensively fine. As I said, is more just defensive efforts, which you can't read off paper.
Yeah, true.
So, you know, as I said, I can see why you would put those 2 down. But the real hero, an unlikely stray moose, managed to go into the forward line, which has happened before. If you watch Freo games, you normally see him in there in the last quarter, but he's never had such a clean run and jump as this. A bit unlucky, as I mentioned Zerk Thatcher before. In this contest, he seemed to not have a very good run at it. Again, maybe hobbled up, which sort of got against him. He wasn't matched up against Moose, I don't think, in that contest, but he would have been the player that was having a good enough game to spoil it. But Moose gets it, slots it in, gets in the 6 points, and you know what? Port had their chances to win, but at the same time, a lot of the small things that came undone to them were A, a tiny bit of bad luck, and B, a lot of turnovers by Roar players who were otherwise playing very well. They weren't just tacking the ball forward, they were trying to create a bit more structured system, and honestly, I still don't mind it. You know what I mean? It's like Jack Whitlock, for example, not the greatest game and had a few costly turnovers. But you can see what he was trying to do, push up the ground. Ollie Lord, even though he was beaten by Jack Voss, the fact that he was playing a really solid defensive role in the absence of Lockie Jones, who would have been by far the more apt opponent for someone as informed as Voss, you know, it was still pretty good. And again, absolutely shut down Jai Amos, kept Tracy relatively quiet. It was, you know, it just felt opportunistic, a lot of Freo's. And, you know, they did miss the easy ones as well. But overall, Port did as well as you would expect them to. And I reckon they just wear this loss on their shoulders, you know. It does speak a bit for Freo, a bit of concern, but, you know, as I said, it wasn't like Port were just gifting in the game. They played a really solid effort.
Yeah, I completely agree. But again, it does come into question that, like, how can you allow someone like Pierce to just get such a clean run at it when he's such a big man?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think it was like they did body out the contest fairly well. I just think it was like a bit of a match because obviously, again, they were running low on tall defenders, so that extra body down there I think there were, I can't quite remember who it was, but I think it might have been Josh Sin having to defend him in that last contest. Apologies to Josh Sin if I'm wrong, but yeah, you're just missing a bit of height. It was sort of one of those things where, like, maybe you could have been aware of it, but, you know, it's just one of those set plays that where if it works, you look at genius.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, as I said, it's not guaranteed. It's like, you know, it was just like the maximum output you could get from it. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, but I will want to say one thing, and I'll stop talking about Port because obviously this game, for the future of this season, a lot more should be said about Fremantle. You know, I reckon this year's is just going to be a huge sliding doors because, like, everyone's saying, oh, are Fremantle frauds or not, you know, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, they've gone through this season winning a lot of the close games.
Yes,
They
it's true.
could get a top 4 spot, you know, and with relatively minimal injuries. And, you know, as I said, as fortuitous as they are, you know, they're winning the game they're winning a lot of games consistently with a team that they're looking like to play for final. The only one they're going to get back is Hayden Young. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like, as flaky as it is, I think you also got to look at the other way. And, you know, and that is Fremantle, despite areas of the ground, especially offensively, falling apart at random intervals, still find ways to win. They find ways to win when offensive things aren't going for them. Does rely a lot on their defense. I do think they can't afford another key injury defense. Like if they lose Pierce or Cox, I think you would start ringing the alarm bells.
Mm-hmm.
But I reckon as long as their backline stays healthy, they've got as much chance as anyone. Well, not anyone else. I still think the top 3 teams, as in like Geelong, Adelaide, and well, I guess Collingwood and Brisbane are now in that precipice range. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
I
get it.
think you know, as I said, they're, you know, still fairly respectable. As I said, it's just like one of those things where, like, this could be a really good run for them because, like, you don't expect them necessarily to make a prelim, but they could. And you know what I mean? It's like they've still got enough veteran talent, like, where you would say, like, you would imagine next year would be the more likely one if they consolidate and build.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why they really can't do it this year. Like, they've still got enough talent on the park.
Yeah.
As I said, it's just those fringe players that are a bit of a worry. Well, not fringe players, but consistency from those fringe players, where it's like not any individual players and it's lines.
Mm-hmm.
Is just one of those lines in a final you imagine might be caught out. And you know what I mean? So, you know, as I said, if they coughed up one of these midfield performances to a team that kicked a regular amount of goals in the first quarter, like this game would have been a lot. There's no doubt about it. In fact, you could probably argue the injuries, but you know what I mean? It's like Port were playing like at a finals like intensity, but with a lesser squad. Like this
Yes.
squad isn't going to be winning too many matchups, really. So unless you get the full value, which they very much nearly did. So, you know, shrug your shoulders, but you know, it's one of those things where you're mildly concerned, but at the same time, I would be way more optimistic about getting that top 4 spot, and I would not care how it's done. You know,
Yeah, I completely agree. In
they've
Freya's
got the best
case,
record against the top 8 teams. You
yeah,
know,
that's true.
so why not be optimistic?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as long as they keep winning these games, the 4 points right now is kind of all that really matters.
Yeah,
Like you win games, you'll stay in the top 8. Obviously,
yeah,
when it comes to like the teams that are sitting kind of below you or equal to you in points, percentage will matter just a little bit.
mm.
But for the most part, as long as you get those 4 points, guaranteed to pretty much play finals. On Port's
Yeah.
side
And
of
as I
things, though,
said, the
just
only teams I
before,
would say that are pretty much locked into being better teams are Adelaide and Geelong.
yeah, agree.
Anyone else, Fremantle have roughly enough talent to match up. So, you know, that's only 2 teams, and who knows? One of them might get knocked out early, one of them you might eke out a win, and the premiership race is right open.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just on Port's side of things, though, I think this was a very admirable win. Very
Yeah.
something that I think they can really take in their stride, even though it's definitely one that they would have preferred to, have the win over, especially because it would have also
Yeah.
shaken up the top 8 even more than it already has.
Would have been fun.
But
Not for Freo fans.
But in terms of like this being, it was one of those games that I feel like was played with a lot of emotion, and not just because
Mhm.
of like just the whole, you know, one of Ken
Boak,
Hinkley's final games at the
King
Adelaide Oval,
Hinkley, yeah.
Freo, making potentially playing finals, potentially going deep. It's Travis Boak and Nat Fyfe matching up into each other in one of their final
Mm.
games and saying farewell pretty much within the same week.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I mean. As I said, it was a very touching moment when they did change jerseys because a lot of that stuff I just sort of glossed over because a lot of these athletes, you know what I mean. It's like you're in your 20s and it's like, yeah, these athletes that I know, but like a lot of them, you sort of half have their career. But
Mm.
like Fife and Boak, it hit me. It's like I've watched pretty much the full careers of both these players, and it comes and goes. Like, you know what I mean? It's like for my football watching, you know, live, I've had those two players, and all of a sudden they're gone. So, it's one of those weird things. It's like I didn't really get emotional. Emotional. I'm not really that externally emotional when it comes to these types of things for sports. But man, it's just like one of those sweet things that you only really realize that when you put a bit of thought into.
Yeah, it's there's a lot more to the game than just the final score. It's all about,
Yeah.
the players and the relationships those players build and the relationships that the fans have with those players, etc., etc.
Mm.
There's always a lot of emotion in this game at the end of it all.
Yeah. I'll let you get on the individual because there's something at the end I would like to talk about. So,
Yes. So I am going to just jump straight into it, starting with Andy Brayshaw. He was immense with pressure, finishing with 23 disposals, 14 contest possessions, 9 clearances, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles, 23 pressure acts, 31 percenters. Jaeger Amira was very solid in movement, collecting 26 touches, 7 contest possessions, 4 marks, 9 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 6 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, 542 meters gained. Then Carl Warner had a lot of influence, finishing with 15 disposals, 4 intercepts, 4 marks, 2 behinds, 5 score involvements, 7 1 percenters, and 6 spoils. Over on the Port Adelaide side of things, Jed McEntee on his 50th game lit up the Adelaide Oval when he had a chance to, kicking 2-1 from 12 touches, 8 contest possessions, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles for 2 of them inside 50, 20 pressure acts, 6 ground ball gets with 3 of them inside 50 as well. And then Elia was very, very important in Port Adelaide's defense. He also floated forward and kicked a goal from 22 disposals, 21 of them effective, equating to 95.5% efficiency, 9 contest possessions, 12 intercepts, 17 marks, with 6 of them being intercept marks, 5 score involvements, 9 1%ers, 8 spoils, 412 meters gained, and 100% time on ground. On the injury side of things, Jack Lukosius went out very early with a leg injury. It's very unlucky for him because he's just always been plagued by leg injuries. And then on the MRO side of things, Andy Brayshaw was fined $2,000 for tripping Zach Butters. Nat Fyfe was fined $3,125 for contact with an umpire, and Connor Rosé was fined $1,875 for contact with an umpire.
and this is a controversial one. Like, for me, I don't think Conor Rosie should have got fined for that. Because this was a contest, and it was probably a controversial free kick as well. Late in the contest,
Mm-hmm.
Nat Fyfe sort of did the Matt Rowell thing of sort of trying to use the umpire to break the sort of player, but he dragged Rosie into the umpire. So realistically, I'm not really sure there was much Rosie could do. You could argue that positioning wise, they started too close to the umpire anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been a bit harsh on Rosie. I think you might not be asking for like paying off the fine money, but maybe Nat Fyfe offers him a beverage if they ever get together post retirement life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
But as I said, Fyfe's got to be too careful because there's only so much money he's going to get for the rest of his career now. He's
True.
only got I don't know how much money you get per game, but it would only be a few thousand left. So
Yeah, he's got two games
don't want to
left
spend it
plus
all on
potential
umpires.
final
Yeah.
series, so there might not be all that much in the bank for him. Um,
No, so
Jumping over now to our Sunday games for the week. Heading up back to Canberra, up to Monaco, where the Giants hosted North Melbourne, and with a 54-point margin, the Giants went out 20-13, 133 to 12-7, 79.
yeah, and it was sort of roarish side for North and a I won't quite say it's a B reserve side for GWS, but there's certainly a few players that were missing. But offensive prowess definitely wasn't missing this game. Without Hogan, Brown and Cadman stepped out immensely. Grzycki actually did okay. He was just accurate. But it was fair to say that this may have been a Green Day tribute act because both Toby and Tom got 14 score involvements apiece and were almost unstoppable. As once again, North got smacked around in stoppages. As it was only again a one-way running for North Melbourne ground. The plus side for the Roos is they weren't actually bad once they were inside 50, and especially because they were playing a few younger players there. Trembath seemed to be giving a bit more in the absence of Larkey and Finbar Malley on his debut game, and Darling was very accountable when needed. The problem is it was just an absolute spanking in the contest. Roos had too many kicks, not going to much of anywhere as they looked absolutely clueless on the outside, and the Giants were fantastic at changing tempo and providing some nice deep entries for their forward. Powell, Scott, and Stevens, from the stats, seem to be the main culprits of the breakdown in outside play yet again. As the offensively established middle core was still okay for the Roos. I did say that the Roos did get smacked in stoppages. Like Freo, it was more offensively they were okay. Defensively, a bit dismal. But for the Giants, again, I'd like to shout out some of the younger outside players who are still continuing to be good. Harvey Thomas probably had one of his best games, and Ryan Angwin, again, keep an eye out for him because, again, he might be one of those players that highly touted, hasn't really got going due to injury, but come a final series, he might be one of those players like Peatling or Cummings were last year that almost pushed them to what should have been a decent finals campaign. But yeah, for too little players for North got involved, whilst the Giants looked pretty much consistent. Not everyone had a good game, but most at least had some impact. And the only real concern for the Giants was their defense probably wasn't as sharp on the good entries as they might have liked.
Yeah, it's slightly. They were surprisingly forced to play fairly wide in terms of their goal attack. The Giants. I don't know if that was just due to North's defense just suddenly appearing, or if it was just the way the players led. But it definitely is something to keep an eye on. Even though they were fairly accurate, 2013, 33 scoring shots, fairly solid. But it's definitely like some sort of. It's definitely maybe a little bit of a weakness their forward line could be prone to if they're just forced to continuously play wide a bit more.
I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where I think the Giants are like, well, if you offer it, we'll take it. You know what I mean? And I get it was like relatively wide, but I think there's enough straightforward shots.
Oh yeah.
I think it was just more. You know what I mean? It's like. I think when you got a poorer defense, it's just like trying to if you know you're not going to win the contest, which is at least a positive step for North. But I said I don't think too many people were saying that they had a defensively solid game this week. It's just it seems like they're just trying the best they can.
Yeah, I mean there isn't really too much to really say about this game as a whole. Again, Giants needed the percentage boost, they got that. They needed the 4 points, they got that. It's just. And kind of just it's probably one of the only games in terms of like top 8 versus bottom 8 where it's not really, it's like a dead rubber sort of situation otherwise.
Yeah. Did I do my maths wrong? Was this actually a larger margin than the game?
No, this was smaller. Not by much, but it was smaller.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It was pretty close though. Like 54 points compared to 60 something, I think 66, 56, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm just gonna quickly run through our individuals, starting with Aaron Cadman. Again, I actually really love that he's finally come into his own this season. He's been phenomenal for their forward line. He kicked 4 goals from 12 disposals, 11 of them effective, equating to 91.7% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 7 marks with 6 of them inside 50, 2 goal assists, 8 score involvements, and 11 pressure acts. Xavier O'Halloran was very important through the midfield, finishing with 23 touches, 9 contest possessions, 4 marks, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 2 goal assists, 6 score involvements, 7 tackles, 24 pressure acts, and 396 metres gained. And Harry Himmelberg lifted in defence. Again, they're still missing Jack Buckley down there, so someone's had to kind of fill in that role a little bit more. And Himmelberg's been very good on intercept. He collected 24 disposals, 11 intercepts, 13 marks, with 6 of them being intercept marks, 5 score involvements, 5 1%ers, and 5 spoils. And debutant Cooper Tremba for North Melbourne showed very promising signs, kicking 3-1 from 6 touches, 4 contested possessions, 4 score involvements, 2 1%ers, and 2 spoils. George Wardlaw has found some solid form with a pressure role this time, finishing with 18 disposals, 12 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 5 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 4 goal assists, 6 score involvements, 11 tackles, 27 pressure acts, and 10 ground ball gets. And a shout out to the other debutant in this game, Geordie Payne, who kicked a goal from 6 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 3 score involvements, 3 tackles, and 18 pressure acts. On the injury side of things, Riley Hardiman went off with concussion, so he will not play next week. And then on the MRO side of things, Joe Fonte was fined $1,000 for engaging in a melee. Cooper Harvey was also fined $1,000 for the same thing, I assume against each other. And then Stephen Canelio was fined $1,000 for striking George Wardlaw.
Yeah, so, I don't think there's really much else to say from this match. I think I slammed North enough last week to not want to go off about it this week, but at least their forward lines improved. That's always like one of those things where it's like, it's the one thing you can often go back to on North. So hopefully they can maybe bring that for the 17th poll that we're going to be talking about soon. But I guess for your case, you probably hope that they fall back into the pit of misery.
Honestly, I'm not too bothered by it at the moment. Like, I'd rather see a competitive league than teams that are very obviously bad and teams that are very obviously good. Like, I'd much rather see a lot of like interesting games rather than blowouts, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think you'd prefer Richmond beating.
Oh no, obviously,
100%.
But like,
anyway,
you never know. All right, let's jump over to our next game over at the MCG, where the Demons hosted the Bulldogs, and with a 6-point margin, the Dogs won out 15-15, 105 to 15-9, 99.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just didn't give this game any credit. I just had other things on, so I didn't look at it until very much later. Hang on a second. So Melbourne, they continue to their trend of actually scoring points, which is a bit of a rarity for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
First game under Troy Chaplin, took the Bulldogs to the sword, edging a slight freak fourth quarter lead after the Bulldogs had the lead all day. And they did make the game go down to the last end of bounce, where a terrific pack mark by Darcy prevented a minor miracle draw.
Mm-hmm.
Bulldogs, like a few others this week, had the more bulk disposals and clearance dominance, yet couldn't quite make the most of it through scoring and transitions.
Mm-hmm.
As both both way movement was very easy in this contest. Melbourne could move the ball, North could move the ball. Aaron Norton made full advantage of the missing back line for the Ds, and the debutant. And while the debutant Adams did a good job lining up with him, didn't lose 1v1s. He did 4 marks inside 50 against him. I'm assuming that they were enough, close enough to a direct matchup, but clearly Norm was just on another level today, and he's had probably one of the best months in football for a key forward.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously considered 100 points, but it felt like it could have been a bit more. For the Bulldogs, whereas Melbourne were creating shots from far less dominant passages of play, as their outside and inside midfield was very vanilla, but their interceptors were the ones that got a lot more of the movement in Melbourne, and almost one of them. Despite the loss in the clearances, Melbourne's shape post clearance actually was good. They didn't turn this clearance dominance into score against.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, that intercept defense was just covering the holes missing from their players. And you know what I mean? I thought the younger players did well in providing into the goal tally. So yeah, I think it was just like a mixture of things that made Melbourne play fairly well. I don't think horrendous that this game again for the Bulldogs was fairly close. But again, for the Bulldogs fans, it would have been sweat and bullets. Making sure that this wasn't the way that they exited final.
Yeah, this was one of those games where it was very much a danger game for them. Again, Melbourne just losing their head coach. It always seems to be a trend that a team manages to get up just as they lose their head coach. That's almost happened here. Thankfully, miracles do happen sometimes, and the Bulldogs managed to get one of them. Um, it's definitely probably could have used the percentage a little bit more on this. But one, they got some more experience on the MCG. They don't actually play the MCG all that often. I think they've only played it like a handful of times this year. So it's definitely needed for them in terms of them wanting to play finals. Welcome back. Especially, grand finals played on the Hello Turf. You got to get that experience if you're going to make an impact. But otherwise, like, I don't really think there was too much negatives to really take away from the Dogs here. I think it was just a highly competitive game. There maybe is a little bit of defensive falters. We know their defense has always had issues this season.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was
think,
it was highly
the biggest
competitive and a
would have
great
been-
test.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, but is like always a concern for the Dog, was turnovers off transition. Their transition can be fairly fluky, but they just probably had a few more turnovers direct that they would have liked. Because as I said, if they could force it to stoppage, they could just get back dominance clearances. But obviously, from the few intercepts that Melbourne were able to get, and it was actually very even count. It was 58 to 59.
Yeah.
So it's not like they had pure numbers. But you know what I mean? It's just like Melbourne, both scored a lot from turnover, but you know what I mean? For Melbourne, that was far more important because obviously the Bulldogs were getting stopped at stoppage, which is normally where they're fairly good at. Whereas for the Dogs, they're winning the stoppages, they just weren't converting it to score, which I would say is more of a credit to Melbourne. But again, what kept Melbourne in it was pretty much turnovers because I would say like there was no real offensive dominant performance. It was very much a team performance to get this amount of goals. There were a lot of singular goal kickers for Melbourne. So it was sort of like everyone chipped in and almost got them there.
Yeah. Definitely a credit to Melbourne for having a very, very spirited chance at ruining the Dogs' finals chances, essentially. The Dogs needed to win this game to stay in touch. If they had lost this game, they needed minor miracles to even just make the finals. So again, thankfully for them, they got the 4 points. But to the Demons, I think they can hold their heads. I think they can hold their heads up high in most cases. Again, like the Port game with Freo against Freo.
Yeah.
It's a little unfortunate that this one slipped away from them. But there's definitely something that they could do. Or not something they could do, but like this is one of those games that they can feel for the most part pretty good about themselves. That they were up to the challenge, that they made it hard for the Dogs, and that they can hopefully carry a little bit of this momentum that they suddenly have just to end on a positive note with the season.
Yeah, because again, like Port Adelaide and like a few other teams talking about, Carlton, North Melbourne, they don't have their number one draft pick this year, so there's no real point in caring too much about wins and losses. I know some people like to think tanking's better, but they really just got to work out form for next year, who they're going to play, who they're going to focus on. So sometimes I think it's actually good. Like not having your first round draft pick, they would rather have it. But when you're forced to say, okay, we're not going to get anyone significant in the draft, or if we are, it's going to be lucky. That's going to change things. Who are we going to look at next year to turn things around? So with a new coach, it's good that question will be asked and not be sort of look to bail out in, just through the draft.
Yeah,
because they should have enough. It's not like they're playing all that miserably.
No, I mean
it was just the earlier season where they were atrocious.
Yeah, it was the start of the season where they were pretty bad. They've come back from quite a bit away to actually put on some fairly solid performances, had some decent wins. So they've got some decent,
Hmm.
they've got some good bits that they can really learn and take from, and then just others that they have to
Yeah.
obviously work on.
Yeah, and of course, just randomly losing in very dumb fashion. That
Yes.
St Kilda game, and I think there was another one where they just lost a pretty. Oh, Carlton.
Yeah,
That's
the one
right.
against Carlton was not ideal for them either. Um,
No, so
But let's jump over to the individuals, starting with Ed Richards. I thought he was very outstanding in this game. He kicked 2-1 from the 31 disposals, 26 of them effective, equating to 83.9% efficiency, 70 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 14 clearances, 2 goal assists, 15 score involvements, 23 pressure acts, 14 ground ball gets, and 524 meters gained. I haven't looked at the coaches' votes, but he probably got full marks, to be honest. Simon Vitore was very immense pressure, finishing with 24 touches, 9 contested possessions, 6 marks, 3 inside 50s, 4 clearances, a behind, 5 score involvements, 12 tackles, 38 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers. Then Oscar Baker was also very influential. He collected 21 disposals, 16 of them effective, equating to 76.2% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 6 marks, 2 clearances, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles, 12 pressure acts, 6 1%ers, and 330 meters gained. Over on the Melbourne side of things, Captain Max Gorman matched up very well to Tim English, getting 42 hitouts, 12 of them to advantage, and a goal from 23 touches, 14 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 5 marks, 5 clearances, 8 score involvements, 5 1%ers, and 4 spoils. Former number 1 mid-season pickup Jai Cully, I believe it was the 2022 mid-season draft he was picked up. He was very solid, kicking a goal from 16 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 5 clearances, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles, and 16 pressure acts. And then shout out to debutant Jed Adams, who you briefly mentioned, who finished with 5 touches, 3 intercepts, 2 score involvements, 3 tackles, 16 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. On the injury side of things, Caleb Winsler went out with a hamstring concern, likely won't play this week, but hopefully it's not major. Then Latham Vandermeer was out with concussion. I find it very interesting how he's often always one of the few players constantly out, but this time it's for concussion rather than a leg injury, which he seems to often get. But thankfully, he's only going to miss one game. He's actually been pretty solid when he has been in. It's just very unfortunate that he's just been in and out so often.
yeah, it's a bit of like that. It's sort of been half in the side, but there's a few people catching up around him in terms of forward line pressure in the Bulldogs. It's not like they're short of that, but yeah, as I said, come this part of the season, you always want to be trying to keep your spot, and he definitely has been putting in the effort this season.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
right.
been very start and stop for him.
Yes, it's just a very unlucky run, but when he has been in, has been fairly solid. Clearly worth being in there 22 for a reason, under Bevo's eyes at the very least. But
Mm.
it's who knows if the player who takes his spot when he's out this week with concussion puts on a very very solid job, could be some more headaches going into a potential finals campaign.
Yeah, but I think it's like a good problem for the Bulldogs. As I said, they're a forward pressure team, and they've got a lot of forward pressure players. So it's not like they're ever going to be too short of being able to execute their game plan.
Yeah, that's right. All right, time to jump over to the last game of the round, the game that this episode is mostly named after, over at Optus Stadium, where the Eagles host the Adelaide Crows, 18th versus 1st, and with a 9-point margin. Unbelievable scenes over at Optus. The Crows managed to hold out, winning 13-9, 87 to 12-6, 78.
Yeah, honestly, one of the most entertaining 18th versus 1st games in recent memory. For the most part, Eagles played a solid 4 quarters of attacking football. And amazingly, Adelaide couldn't generate intercept points from one of the leakiest teams in the AFL in that regard. They still had a high amount of turnovers, but Adelaide were just stagnant. As it seemed to be the Eagles being able to take the ball further from normal, especially from an intercept. They were a lot faster off the back half, and once they did get the initial intercept, and whilst Adelaide had the bulk of possession, territory, and clearance, which was still important in this game because obviously they sort of did win out just by grinding out more entries than the Eagles. The inside 50 count being 51 to 37. It was very impressed that the Eagles got 12-6 from 37 inside 50s because, as we said, Adelaide still have some okay defenders. But the Eagles pretty much made the most of their forward line, and surprisingly, Adelaide didn't, especially in those first three quarters. Phil Thorpe, he was good, but very late with his impact. To a lesser point, Burgess, he presented well late, but couldn't score any goals.
Mm-hmm.
And for a backline playing Rhett Bazzo as an honest defender against one of the best scoring teams in the comp, they did extremely well to keep Adelaide under 100 points. I should say that's not an insult to Rhett Bazzo. He's like a project defender that's being played a bit
I was gonna
too
say that kind of sounded
raw.
like you're coming off as an insult.
I mean, right now he's not a good defender. I don't think anyone's going to be,
Well,
what
yeah,
I mean?
everyone takes
Like,
time.
I'm saying, like, as I said, they're forced to be playing some.
Yeah.
It's like Rhett Bazzo, Harry Edwards, Sandy Brock. Like, you got an average age of about 21. Like, against this monstrous side, and they did get the wood over him late, but geez, like 51 entries, only 87 points. I would be very happy with that. Despite still a bit of a clearance smacking, again, one of the Eagles' biggest banes, Tim Kelly was able to provide a lot of good avenues for goal from centre, set up a lot of the Eagles' best plays. The execution all night, as I mentioned before, was a bit off for the Eagles, but it was far better, as I mentioned, from the lethargic movement that the Crows seem to be going. Beaten both off points off halfback and points off turnovers by the Eagles on the raw score. So, as I said, the intercept hunt that Adelaide's known for just wasn't there. Eagles kept producing enough, but the Adelaide backline weren't getting any score from them. Keane and Worrell got a few intercept marks. They still had solid games, but they just didn't have the spark play that they could sometimes generate from. And sometimes it felt like Rankin, in terms of the midfield, was faster in congestion than he was at free space at times. Despite all this, again, some of the top talent managed to edge out. I mentioned the clearance dominance. Jordan Dawson was absolutely fantastic. He was a big reason why Adelaide managed to eke out a win. But you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, the Eagles always going to be bad at preventing score from stoppage. That's just how they are because, they're one of the youngest and least impressive midfields in the competition. But in terms of effort, in terms of playing a brand of football that you would want to continue, this would be the blueprint for the Eagles going forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is probably the higher end execution from the talent that you're probably going to have around next year. And it was pretty good to watch.
Yeah, I watched Mini's presser after this game, actually, because I was really curious to see his thoughts. And he pretty much said that, like, as long as they play like this, if they could play like this every week, that regardless of win or loss, they'd be happy. Because it shows that they are making good progress, making good steps, and tracking in a direction that's very favorable to a fairly, potentially a very solid rebuild.
Yeah, and it's not like the Eagles haven't been good at playing offensive football. And it's not like the Eagles, on the flip side, haven't had these sort of things that have sort of caused them then lost. But I think the difference is just that backline to midfield to forward connection. Like, all those lines, like, there were some failures, but they were all linking up enough. Which is what we haven't seen. Like, sometimes the forward line's been good, but they're being conceding a lot. Sometimes their midfields just drop the ball, but enough lines were doing enough things correctly, to make the most of what they did have going for them, which are, as I said, very different to most times where they've looked like a team that's better than 4 points, but you can clearly see why they haven't been winning games. But this one, yeah, as I said, you look at this game and you would have no real reason to expect that the Eagles were a 4-point team at this point. You might guess that they're bottom fourth due to the turnovers, but they definitely looked a lot better than where they were.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely a positive sign going forward. Again, a little bit of a concern for Adelaide. They let this happen against the bottom, against the 18th team for one.
Yeah.
But I mean, there could be some little bit of little bit of reasons as to why. Again, Tex wasn't playing, so they didn't really have their main leader up forward. Again, that can be neither here nor there because
I don't
he's
think,
meant to be
I
the
don't,
player that's meant to kind of sit out because of his age mostly.
yeah.
Um, so but like it feels weird when it
I
just
think
took
it
a
was just
while for
a
them to kind
rare
of step
game where
up.
their back half really didn't fire because they've been pretty consistent, but I guess it's one of those things where like sometimes where a team's been going so well in one area and then they like all of a sudden have an off night
Mm.
and it's night and day. You know what I mean? And I think this was the case because as I said, they just weren't getting intercept into scoring. As I said, uh yeah, it's just like I don't even think that many players like had pure stinkers, but yeah, so they weren't intercepting, which caused their general play to be a bit slower,
Mm-hmm.
which caused the Eagles in turn to get, so it was sort of a flow-on effect.
Oh
So,
yeah.
sometimes they win by raw talent. Good teams are able to do that. Um, but while it's a bit of concern, it's like it would be if there was a few more games in this like period of time where that's happened, but since it's the only one, you just got to shrug your shoulders.
Yeah, that's true. Again, Adelaide just needed the 4 points at the very end of the day, and they got it.
Yeah.
So they now sit a game clear on the ladder, which we are about to touch on. But before that, I'm going to mention our individuals, starting with Luke Pedler, of all people. He kicked 3 goals from 8 disposals, 3 contested possessions, 5 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, 2 1%, 2 spoils. Very solid from him in the absence of Tex, of course, and with the other tolls kind of not having as much of an influence as they normally should have. Young forward Zach Taylor was very effective. He kicked 1-1 from 20 touches, 11 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 3 inside 50, 6 score involvements, 5 tackles, 13 pressure acts, 7 ground ball gets. And then captain Jordan Dawson was extremely influential. Again, another phenomenal game from him. He kicked a goal from 26 disposals, 19 of them effective, equating to 73.1% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 6 marks, 11 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 5 score involvements, 14 tackles, 32 pressure acts, 2 1%, and 638 meters gained. Tim Kelly for the Eagles stepped up massively, kicking a goal from 25 touches, 19 contested possessions, 11 clearances, 6 more involvements, 5 tackles, 23 pressure acts, 10 grab ball gets, and 332 meters gained. Then Sandy Brock stood tall in defense, finishing with 12 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 5 marks, 4 grab ball gets, 10 1%, and 10 spoils. On the injury side of things, James Peatling went off with a cork thigh, 50-50 as to whether he'll be okay for this week's game. Hopefully he will be. Otherwise, could be. It might be good for him to actually have that extra week because he's been doing a lot of good work on the outside.
Mm.
And then for the MRO side of things, this is very interesting. Rory Laird will miss 1 match for rough conduct against Jamie Cripps, and then Liam Duggan ends his season early, missing 2 matches for rough conduct against Riley Thilthorpe.
I didn't see either of those two. Surprised. Maybe it was very early. I think I missed the start of this game because I was doing the dishes. But yeah. Yeah, as I said, shrug your shoulders. As I said, a few Adelaide friends were pulling their hair out, but when you're on top of the ladder, like you forget these come end of the season, come finals. A week's a good time to forget about a mediocre performance. So, yeah, as I said, if it's a one-off, who cares? The game against Collingwood will quickly get fans to forget it if they go well in that game.
Pretty much. Speaking of, that's where we're jumping over to now with the ladder. I'm just going to quickly run through it because not much has really changed, but it's still worthy to note because of it being the last 2 games of the season coming up. So obviously Adelaide are now a game ahead on 64 points. Geelong, Collingwood, and Fremantle round out the top 4, all on 60 points. Brisbane, thankfully, thanks to that draw, are currently sitting 5th on 58 points. Gold Coast and Hawthorn sitting tied 6th and 7th on 56 points. The Giants also join them, also on 56 points. And then obviously the Bulldogs on 52 points. Still a game out, but with a very solid percentage. In fact, second highest percentage out of the top 9. Oh, sorry, third highest percentage. I didn't look at the Crows. Third highest percentage out of the top 9. So as long as they get that extra game, they have a fair chance of staying in thanks to their percentage. And then just briefly shuffles in the rest of the ladder with St Kilda jumping to 11th and Melbourne dropping to 13th. Port Adelaide dropping to 12th, Melbourne 13th, and Carlton 14th. Otherwise, nothing else has really changed. We don't really have to talk about that all that much.
Mm.
So,
All right, let's jump into next week.
let's take a look at the round ahead. With
Essendon
another
St Kilda.
Essendon Friday night game. Unfortunately,
Oh
this is
man,
kind of just how it's
it's
had
a
to
double
unfold.
header.
True, it is a double header,
Yeah,
so we do have a better game to
and
watch, thankfully.
and it's one of those things where it's like if you're a fan of these two teams, it's like, well, you know, as I said, it should be even. Essendon's ability to randomly be okay and score and have crap awful defense, while St Kilda have a fantastic defense at times and crap awful scoring in recent times. Who knows?
Yeah, this could be.
Honestly,
I know it's obviously a dead rubber game, but
yeah.
this could genuinely be an interesting game to match up with, or to watch for said matchups, I should say.
Yeah, because it's like one of those things where it could be awful, but like I think a bit of inspiration. Because as I said, both these teams are trying. As I said, it's just St Kilda. If they feel like they're not getting offensive dominance, they just like shut down the game. Which obviously leads to less entertaining contests.
Yes.
Curse you, Ross the boss. Essendon, as I said, they don't get the ball inside midfield inside forward 50 that much, but against the Saints, you know, it's not going to make too much a difference if they hack kick it inside because like that's what the Saints force you to do anyway. So, you know, if they can make the most of their scoring, this could be like a game where they win 70-50, something like that. But yeah, as I said, for Essendon too, it's one of those games where you have to take advantage of the fact that you don't have to defend tall. So you just like try and tell your defense is like whatever you do, make sure you defend on the ground level, prevent the general scores from piling up, and we have a good chance of winning this game. Still back in the Saints, but there are a lot more avenues than you think of Essendon winning.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely also backing the Saints on this one, but it could definitely be much more of a 50-50 game than people might expect. Obviously, this is played at Marvel, so fairly even turf for both teams. Probably more St Kilda than the Bombers, but definitely shaping up to be a potentially fun game to watch. However, our doubleheader game over in the West at Optus Stadium with Freo hosting the Lions, that is going to be the one to watch.
Yeah, and honestly, there have been some pretty good contests between these two teams recent times. Last year, it was not so much a surprise win, but a good early win by Freo, Optus Stadium. The year before that, it was a very close game where the Lions narrowly eked out a win. Very inaccurate, but the Dockers... the Dockers are very accurate, the Lions were very inaccurate. But the Dockers getting ahead on that. But yeah, it's a very interesting one. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, well, are you concerned about the Dockers' inability to defend from stoppages? Or do you say, well, it'll be porous, but if they can get it into their forward line, they're going to have a lot of advantage in their tall forwards against a pretty mediocrely performing Brisbane defense. It's going to be interesting to see the changes they pull too, because honestly, you'd almost think about dropping Amos at this point, but on the flip side, it's like, well, who do you put in, or do you go small? But that obviously has less advantage against the Brisbane defense. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the lineup is. I do think Dockers should get it done, only because they've been getting it done so much and Brisbane look a bit flaky, but oh man, I mean, it's almost gambler's fallacy. You just expect Freo to drop one of these games.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that the game that they dropped, the 2 weeks ago now, that would have been like the only game, but that's with Freo, there's always that kind of expectation that they're just going to randomly drop a game that maybe they should have won.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, even with Sydney, I think the difference between the Sydney game and the other games is like Sydney has really good.
True.
And I don't think that's Brisbane's forte. So, you know what I mean? It's like, again, if it's one of those things where like scoring from the center is going to be a big thing. It's like, well, it's a question of, do you outscore the Lions? And with Freo's defense, they actually probably would. I could imagine Freo finding scoring easier than the Lions do. But again, it's not like Brisbane don't have threats on the outside. Like Ashcroft can run on the outside. The younger one I'm more referring to.
Levi.
Zach Bailey obviously having a very good season. And yes, you are
I mean,
right,
and a
Levi, as
career,
well.
but season mostly.
Yeah, more like this half of the decade. But yeah, he's coming up really good. So, as I said, still have to keep him accountable. But overall, I reckon Freo can block enough conventional attack to get along. A narrow win in this event.
Agreed. All right, jumping over now to our Saturday games, starting at People First Stadium, where the round 2 of the Expansion Cup will present itself with the Suns and the Giants going at it.
Yeah, well, with the Giants having a very good record against the Suns, this will be I don't know, would you call it a grudge expansion cup? Because, with the bad history with the Suns against the Giants, like, this is the one that says, like, hey, no, we are actually someone you have to pay attention to. It would put the finals for Giants in absolute jeopardy if they lost this. And it's not even one that they're expected so much to win. So, yeah, in terms of what I think the matchup will be, it really depends on if if the Giants can get a defensive matchup on King and Long. I think their general defenders are good enough to make scoring hard for the Suns. They have good outside shape. Again, we've said if you can keep your disposals clean against the Suns, they do struggle to score because they prefer turnover. They don't generally transition from normal play as well. But at the same time, like, the Suns' defense isn't anything to scoff about, but they will want one of their key forwards to light it up, and it has been. So I am actually tipping the Giants for this one. I don't actually think that, it might be harsh to say, I don't actually think the Suns are that much of a chance, but it could be one I'm completely wrong about. I just think that matchup-wise and wise, I just think that the Giants are good in areas which the Suns don't particularly like.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think I'm leaning towards the Giants in this one as well. I want to give more credit to the Suns, but I just think in terms of like forward to defensive matchup, I think the Giants will have the Suns number pretty convincingly. It'll just be about whether the midfield conversions from your O'Hallorans, your Greens, etc., are going to be enough to put some decent score on the board for their forward line.
Yeah, because you're right. Because obviously the Suns should still get more inside 50s from the Giants, but it's just how much of that is going to be good territory, and we know that the Giants score a lot from very minimal inside 50s. So
they do. They're very good at conversion. You would expect,
as long as the Giants still convert at that level the other way. I think the Suns will just have some slip of efficiency somewhere to let the game slip away from them. I do think the Giants are going to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything, but I just think there's going to be a separation of a 20-point gap that just stays pretty flat for the rest of the game.
I agree with that. All right, jumping over to our next game at Marvel Stadium, where Carlton will host Port Adelaide.
Oh, it's a bit of a trying cup, isn't it? Carlton seemingly trying a bit more than they did in that horrid middle of the season period. Whereas Port Adelaide are trying their best with players available. And really, I think Carlton probably should win this if they played as offensively okay as they did against Gold Coast. I do think the one area where Port might get in trouble, on top of, is if Zach Thatcher does still play this week. I think that they will be able to shut down most of the Blues forwards, tall forwards, so it will be about opportunities created. And again, I think that midfield, who has the most impact, because it's two teams where they can rack up some good clearance numbers, but don't always get much from them, and can the other way. So
Yeah.
I think the midfield is where a big swing's going to come in this game. And then it's a bit of luck of the draw with the forward line. Both can be very offensively inept. Both can get on runs with good midfield supply. It's just what ended up happening. I think this is the most variable game of them. But I think just because of that, you would just say because of the cattle on the park, Carlton. Again, I'll be tipping Port still.
Honestly, I'm actually quite 50-50 on this one. I'd probably like to assume that Carlton should get up for this. But stranger things have happened. This is also a dead rubber game, so both teams are mostly playing for pride.
Yeah.
So Port could put out some interesting stops. Obviously, as we've just seen in the game against Fremantle, their defense, despite not being 100% all there, fought very well against the Freo Tolls. I think they can do the same thing against Carlton Tolls. Again, if Zerk Thatcher plays, that'll be perfect for them. They definitely need him
Or
on
Jones
the park.
comes back as well.
Well, Jones coming back as well. That would be a huge help for them. But on Carlton's side of things, it's just about converting well with the opportunities they're presented with from their midfield. Provided their midfield actually gets the ball in the first place, it could be a very mismatch, midfield battle in terms of the personnel that Port are missing and kind of the 50-50 form that some of Carlton's midfield have at the moment. So it genuinely could go either way. Probably going to go tip Carlton on my end, but I wouldn't be surprised if Port get up for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Down
More
to
spoilable.
the MCG, where this is a massive danger game for Hawthorn. Hawthorn are hosting the Demons, of course, and with the Demons taking it to the Dogs and really putting up a massive fight, this becomes a massive danger game for Hawthorn.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's not even so much about, because obviously defensively, this should be a game where Melbourne get a bit shut down, but it's more that inside midfield link up. Because we did see a lot of Melbourne players push up to try and create scoring avenues.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I would see Melbourne's best outcome coming from. Because I think Hawks are a bit better on the outside, obviously. Not that Melbourne's too bad, but in terms of getting the most out of it, it is. So even though I think the Hawks defense should pretty much cover whatever Melbourne have match up. I think the other way though, as I said, we've been seeing Melbourne do enough on, defense. I know that they're not restricting teams anymore. They've got a few injuries, but for a team like Hawthorn, I don't think it's going to do as much damage. So I think that's just narrowed the expected margin to this game. Obviously, the Hawks are probably going to win it, but again, it's just if enough players line up for Melbourne, that'll be the thing. And, in recent times, it has actually. Meek's going to have his work caught up for him against Gawn, which will set up the clearances, should be in Melbourne's favour, which should set up their game going. So Hawks going to have to be disciplined. If they are disciplined, win as much as you expect. But, as I said, it's not too far away from a Melbourne victory all the same. Still tipping Hawks.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning Hawks on this one. That's near guaranteed, to be honest. But I definitely think Melbourne can make it extremely difficult for them. From what we saw from the Dogs game, their defensive work needs to be as on point as it was for them. In terms of what they were able to do against the Dogs forward line, they need to pretty much do to the Hawks forward line. Shutting down the way Jack Gunston has been able to sneak into that deep pocket or deep into the forward square. They need to stop that because that's where he gets a lot of his avenue goals. Is just by sneaking around, which is normally what his other small forwards should be doing. But he just gets away with it a lot of the time. They always underestimate him somehow. And then obviously if they bring in...
He's got a very cadence to his marking. And I know it's weird. I always feel like Gunston leaves a bit later than you would expect him to. And yet he still gets to the ball in the perfect position. I think it throws a lot of defenders off.
Probably. And then obviously if they play Kalshadir or Mabi Ochol, as well as Mitch Lewis, they need to ensure that they get shut down with the air. That'll be primarily on Lever and May, of course. That's mostly their jobs. And then, honestly, it's definitely going to be another midfield battle as well, because we know that Melbourne have good have Viney that does a lot of the shutdown work. But it'll be
Yeah.
whether you let Nash off the leash, whether you let Ward off the leash, Newcomb,
Yeah.
Ginnivan, Watson. Like, there are players
Apparently,
that rotate
Viney
through
also
there.
played a lot on the outside last game as well.
Could
I didn't obviously see it, but apparently he did.
If he
So
does, meshing up onto Ambrosio could be a way to shut down Hawthorn's
be
movement.
interesting. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
definitely
it
something to
could
keep an
be.
eye
I'm
on.
not sure if I would. He didn't have many tackles, so it wasn't like a defensive thing. I don't know. It was just maybe it was a situation thing. I don't know.
Possibly.
I'd have to look back on the footage,
But
but
yeah, definitely
just
keep an eye.
interesting.
Keep an eye on this one, but I think definitely lean towards
Yeah.
Hawthorn regardless. All right,
Yeah,
jumping
absolutely.
over to the Adelaide Oval, where probably match of the round, with the Crows hosting the Magpies.
Well, I mean, this is like prime revenge game. Like, honestly, this is the sort of game where I could just see like Adelaide taking out their frustrations of always losing to a narrow mark, blitzing them.
Yeah, I could see it.
I'm not saying that will happen, but you know what I mean. I reckon this will be like a stealth big margin. But do give respect to Collingwood. They, you know, depending on who they get back, obviously they're not getting Howe, but they will have to at least go back in the books and say, okay, like we've got defensive players missing. How can we intercept the ball? How can we aggressively prevent these Adelaide entries from going deep? And that's a lot to do with, again, being aggressive on cutting up. Because, again, they ran really well last week. They probably ran around the ground a lot better than they did. So if they do that, they might catch Adelaide by surprise. And, you know, as I said, they might, again, it might be a case where they might actually be able to get more direct pressure because it's not like Adelaide play particularly fast until that turnover. So I think it's one of those things where in general play, put a lot of fast pressure on Adelaide, prevent that ball movement, prevent the ball from getting forward as much as you can. And then for Collingwood, you know, as I said, still control that play. I do think, as I said, it's one of those things where I feel like it's either an Adelaide blowout or Collingwood win a narrow one. I don't know why. I just think those are the only two options. So if it's not those two, send me angry whatever's on the internet. I mean, I think I've given up on the weird stat of the week or guess of whatever.
Yeah, I feel like this week is
But
going to
you
be
can
really
take
hard to kind of predict on one.
Oh, I'm just gassed on thoughts at the moment. It's been a pretty long episode. So
That's true.
yeah, so as I said, either Adelaide win by a lot or Collingwood win by a few. That's the only two results. Only lock it in.
Yeah, you know, let's go with that. I'm leaning on the Crows on tip, of course. But see if Collingwood are able to show a bit more fight, and especially if they want this home final, and still want that double chance because they are in jeopardy of losing that. They need to really take it to the Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a very, very big game and a very dangerous game for them.
Yeah.
All right.
I think like the danger side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah,
definitely agree on the dangerous. Definitely more on the dangerous side of things. All right. Jumping over to our Sunday games. Heading down to Hobart, where North Melbourne will host Richmond.
In the 17th bowl. Spoon Bowl is out. It's locked in. So this is the next best we're going to get.
Pretty much.
And I don't know. It's one of those things where Richmond's been playing well, but not quite getting reward for effort. Well, I meant more offensively and all that sort of thing. Whereas North have, you know, been leaning towards going back to tragic. So they need to win. Richmond would like to win. This main game means nothing. But I think the center is where it's going to be more interesting. Again, that's where probably the best Richmond players reside. So if they can get things going, as I said, North seem fairly civ-like. Richmond at least try on the outside. Like I said, the transition between North and Richmond is about the same. I just like the way Richmond better. But as I said, it's really, if Richmond convert enough, it's Richmond, should be Richmond. But if they don't convert, North can easily just score a lot more easier than Richmond, which is where the biggest worry for them is. And again, Hobart puts like that weird spanner where if it's like windy enough or miserable enough to, make scoring a bit of a dirge, that might actually favour Richmond a bit more. I feel like they're a bit more contested, a bit more, got a bit more grit. But at the same time, if it's like one of those ones with heavy wind, that actually might favour North. So yeah, there's a lot of different directions, but it's all a bit meaningless. So I'll let the Richmond fans see what he wants from this. Probably the last big clash of the season for Richmond. Or
Oh,
close.
attempt to win with pride. That's all I could
Yeah.
ask for. Make it a good game, make it a strong game. Ideally, I'd like a blowout just because you can, but I doubt that's going to happen. One being in Hobart, two being in North. Um, Especially because they beat us not that long ago at the MCG. So like a good this is a partial revenge game in one hand. But I just like to see a good contest for the most part. Hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully it'll be a fun game to watch because again, I don't know what the conditions are going to be like. It could be horrible, but fingers crossed for an entertaining game of sorts, even though it is pretty meaningless at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
I'll tip Richmond because I've been slagging off a bit and it'll make me feel more valid as an analyst. I don't really hope for this misery for North though.
No, like we want to see positive signs from all of the
Yeah,
teams that are sitting down here, but again, it's slim pickings at the moment, to be honest.
exactly.
Speaking of a
All right.
team though that could genuinely cause an upset, we're heading over to the SCG
Yeah.
where the Swans will take on the Cats.
It's really the Swans, Geelong's last big game, and
Mm-hmm.
it's their only real opponent for a very long time. Um, yeah, Sydney, I think, will make. I think this will be a good game for Geelong because it's one of the most restrictive transition teams
Mm-hmm.
of the teams that are just like not contending at all in finals. Like a good chunk of them just let play run right through them. Whereas Sydney don't, or at least not in recent times. So I think as much as like Geelong's had that like easy schedule, like this will actually test them. I think Sydney's defense won't be strong enough to stop enough of Geelong's attack. McCartan's had some pretty good form, but I don't think that's quite enough. And it might mean Black Blakey has to have play a very important role because he would need someone to match up with Neil. So whether they decide to do that, make Blakey play a bit more back or like, unleash him on the back half, that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like the Swans midfield versus the Cats midfield. Swans like to get a lot of direct goals out of their midfield and like to get grit and grind out of their midfield. So
Yes.
that'll be an interesting clash. Tipping the Cats, but there's a lot to like about the potential matchup between these two teams.
Agreed. If Sydney get up on this one, that causes even more headaches for the top eight, which makes it even more entertaining, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to link Cats for this. I'm definitely going to tip the Cats for this one. But don't be too surprised if Sydney cause an upset because what we've seen from them in the past couple of weeks, or actually, might be a little bit more difficult without Brody Grundy. Might
Yeah, it's
play.
against Big Klaus and Stanley.
Yeah, but the influence that Grundy has had over the past second half of the season has been nothing short of
Yeah.
insane.
What did Geelong have for a well played Peter Ladham? That's what I am asking you, Blaze.
Better Crummers? I don't know.
No, I said Peter Ladhams, the backup ruck for Sydney.
Yeah, I know. They'll
Oh,
be able to swipe his taps pretty much. I don't know.
yeah,
I expect
I
them
don't
to
know.
probably be better at crumbing at the ruck rather than anything else.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, leading the Cats on that one. But don't be surprised if a potential Sydney upset is in favour. All right, jumping over to our last game at Marvel Stadium, where the Bulldogs will host the Eagles. And do you think the Dogs will show a little bit more respect than the Crows did last week?
Well, I think this is a much worse matchup for the Eagles.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
I think the Eagles can actually play okay against like the slower halfback teams, because they play so aggressively and they make the most of their limited opportunities up forward. Um, yeah, randomly, the Bulldogs you would think are the sort of team that could shred the Eagles very easily. Uh, yeah, as I said, it's hard because, so they did so well last, but matchup wise, clearance wise, obviously, it's, Dogs are one of the best teams for scoring from clearances, and West Coast are one of the worst. So, as I said, yeah, if West Coast, clean up their back half usage, they can make it respectable. But any other situations, I just imagine the Dogs by at least 50.
Yeah, I would expect a massive blowout from the Dogs. Not that they really need the percentage. The percentage isn't an issue. They just need the 4 points. But
Yeah.
you would expect an absolute demolition with how skilled the Dogs are
Mm.
compared to how much the Eagles still lack in terms of playing up against a fast-paced team.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it's a shame, but I imagine it most likely. So as I said, no one was expecting to be competitive against Adelaide, and they were. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think just the style of team. These are the teams that tend to really consistently beat West Coast.
Yeah. But again, we just want to see positive signs, especially because it's away from home for the Eagles. You just want to see some kind of
Yeah,
positive signs at a quote unquote foreign ground, essentially.
yeah. And as I said, it would be absolutely cataclysmic. Like if we thought the win against Adelaide, potential win against Adelaide was like hilarious. If they knock the Western Bulldogs out of the finals for their second win of the season, that would be
That would
scenes
be
for days.
that would be incredible, honestly.
Not for Sooth.
No, not for Suv at all, but
Uh,
that would be incredible to see, honestly. Because the fact of the
yeah,
matter is, Dogs are still a win out of the 8, as we touched on just before. Like
yeah,
they need to win this. It's literally do or die. It's a must. It's despite it being
yeah.
against 18th, it's a must win game.
It's not technically a must win, but it opens the door to being locked out of final if they
Yes,
lose this,
pretty much.
and makes
Um,
it more likely than not.
yeah. But that does bring us to the end of episode 71. So thank you all so much for coming to hang out, coming to chat, coming to chill, coming to like, coming to subscribe, and listen wherever you listen. Do you have much on for the week ahead?
No, I will be probably watching the Crows Adelaide game at the Campfield, which is the largest pub in the Southern Hemisphere. It's the one right next to Optus Oval.
Oh yeah.
We're just sort of meeting up as a family for one of my uncle's birthdays, and just to have a little get together as well. So that'll be nice. I've been there before. It's okay. Is sometimes a bit crowded, but it'll be nice seeing the game as long as there's not too many Collingwood supporters. Should be
Understandable.
not too bad.
Um,
But apart from that, as I said, excited for the AFLW, which is happening next week. I got my
yes.
week confused, but this
Uh,
weekend the AFLW
we
is
did
happening.
end up delaying it to this week. I was pretty tired on the day that we were meant to be recording it, so we figured it kind of just better to do it this week anyway. I will let Sarek take the wheel on most of that because I'm still too unfamiliar with the AFLW side of things. I am slowly learning, but we'll get there eventually. So stay tuned for that. That'll be out on Thursday. But otherwise, I'm not up to much. This weekend, the Victorian Wheelchair Football League has its grand final this weekend, and it's Richmond versus St Kilda. So I might end up going to that just for something different. Another way to support the Tigers. Why not? Um, so that might be a little bit more interesting to look at. Otherwise, mostly streams. I'm trying to get back into more streaming. I didn't really get to do much last week, so I'm hoping to do more this week. But yeah, otherwise, I think that brings us to an end for the episode. So once again, thank you all so much, and we'll see you all on Thursday for our AFLW episode. But if you skip that, we will see you next week for episode 72. So until then, take care.